Welcome back, everyone. This is your host, the DN WhatIf, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into part 1 of What If Deku Had an Analysis Quirk? A special shout out to the original creator, WolfHunter1425. Please make sure to show your support by checking out their work from the description. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya has an analysis quirk. That was what everyone thinks. He rambles about quirks all the time. He could figure out your quirk in seconds. The kid can also come up with your quirk's strengths and weaknesses. If you ask them, he can give you tips on your quirk or even a training plan. He knew almost everything about quirks. It was only natural to assume his quirk was related to other quirks, right? In reality, he is a normal, smart, quirkless boy. Only a few knew this. His mom, his dad, and the doctor that told him he was quirkless. Izuku was told he was quirkless at the age of 4. Even though he didn't have a quirk, he still wanted to be a hero. They were the ones who save everyone and protect everyone. They were the ones that everyone looked up to. When his mom and he got back from the quirk registry office, Izuku immediately asked his mom for her phone. He looked up quirkless heroes. There were none. Mom, I see can be a hero W without a Q quirk, alright? Izuku asked, turning his teary, unsure gaze at his mom. She looked panicked at first, but her expression turned into a determined one. Yes, Izuku, you can be a hero. Mom told him confidently. You just need a quirk. But I don't have a quirk, Izuku responded, confused. Izuku, quirks are just talents. You can't copy a talent, but you can come close to one. She placed a small hand in his hair. We just have to find your talent. After that, Izuku trained, he looked up quirks and began to see what quirk he could mimic. Strength ones were out of the question. Even with a lot of training, he couldn't lift a car. Mutations wouldn't work because they could possibly be ripped off in an accident and he wouldn't be able to use them. Obviously, he couldn't do any enchanting quirks. He couldn't do a healing quirk either. The unnatural quirks were obviously not a good choice. The only quirks he would be able to mimic was the intelligence or mind ones. He could say his intelligence improved, but that would require proof and he didn't know everything. Dream walking isn't a good idea either. Mind control didn't work. He eventually collapsed in exhaustion on his chair. Izuku continued to look for other quirks for a couple of months. People started getting their quirks and Kaken was still waiting for his. Izuku, you still don't have your quirk yet? Kaken shouted at him. No, I must be a late bloomer, Izuku muttered worriedly. You better get your quirk soon, he growled. Every day seemed to start like that. Izuku knew he was running out of time and his mom was trying to help him, but it didn't help. Kids usually got their quirks at 5 or 6, but he was already 7. Kaken was getting impatient and he begun to push him around. He wasn't given a warning when he discovered his quirk. It just began like normal. He had to eat breakfast and go to school, like usual. School started off as it always has been. Kaken asking about his quirk, learning, lunch, and more learning. It was after when the incident began. Everyone was getting out of the school and Izuku and Katsuki were walking to the hero merchandise store together. They walked down the sidewalk to the store and entered. He immediately went for the All Might merchandise in the middle. Then Izuku heard a deafening boom. The door flew open. Everyone, hands up. Sit down with your hands behind your back. Don't move or there will be consequence. It was a man covered head to toe in black clothes. The villain stood in front of the building, sharp, metallic spikes covering his whole body. They seemed really sharp and Izuku did not want to get close to that. When no one obeyed, he began to shoot spikes at them. They all scrambled to sit down. The villain rushed towards the cashier. He shoved the employee out and began to take out the money in it. Izuku had hid himself behind one of the tables. He kept looking at the door for a hero. All Might was going to save them, right? When the spiky villain started to kick down all the shelves of merchandise, Izuku decided he needed to help. The 7-year-old observed the man. What could he do? There wasn't much, but maybe someone else had a better quirk for this situation? The first thing he needed to stop was the spikes. That was the only weapon he had against them. His quirk had something to do with spikes. No, the spikes had just burst into pieces after it hit the ground. Real spikes would have stayed in place. It wasn't a mutation either. The spikes seemed to be on the black cloth. There weren't any holes in the fabric for the possible mutation. So it was probably a mental quirk. He could be bending light to make illusions, but the store was dark. The villain was sending fake imagines into everyone in his range. It was making them think he had dangerous spikes on his body. Izuku softly tapped on Kaken's shoulder. "K Kaken," Izuku whispered. "What?" Kaken's loud trailed off into a harsh whisper. "What do you want?" "I have a plan," Izuku responded nervously. "They aren't our real spikes. He's just making us think that. He doesn't have any other W weapons on him, so you can try to stop him while I ask one of the adults to call the police or a hero." Kaken gives him a firm nod and starts to grin. "Die villain!" Kaken shouts as he launches at the man at the cashier. "He's going to be a great hero." Izuku mutters as he watched Kaken pin down the villain. If he could defeat a villain at 7 with no training, then how about with training? Then he remembers what he was supposed to do. He turns to a woman sitting down with her arms behind her back. 2 children are behind her trembling and she's whispering words to calm them. "Excuse me," Izuku says to the woman. "Do you have a phone? Can you call the police?" She stares at him for a moment and then nods. Quickly, she calls the police and they arrive in seconds. The robber was caught by Kaken and he was getting praised. His mom arrives in tears and started fussing over him. "Izuku, Mommy's here. You were so brave. You're not hurt, right? Come on, let's go home." Mom grabs his hand like she's afraid he would leave her and starts bringing him into the car. "Izuku!" Kaken calls out to him. Izuku turns back. "How did you know the villain had a mind quirk?" Kaken asks suspiciously. He begins to answer, but suddenly an idea comes into mind. A beautiful, bright idea. "I have an analysis quirk." Things suddenly became normal after that. He wasn't the possibly quirkless kid from 2nd grade. He was one of the many normal kids with quirks. Izuku wasn't ignored, but he wouldn't say he had a lot of friends. After school, he began to do physical training. Kaken would join him sometimes, but he'd usually end up training by himself. Izuku had also asked his mom to sign him up for judo lessons. He started going every Saturday. His lack of quirk wouldn't matter and he was going to prove it someday. The analysis quirk he had come up with had to actually work, so Izuku began to learn how to analyze. It wasn't as hard as he thought it was. The kid was a natural. Since he was observant, he could point out bad habits people have and correct them. The frequent villain fights helped too. He lives in a popular area, so there were probably a villain fight every week. That didn't include the All Might videos and movies he watched. They were absolutely amazing. Izuku also started to write down his analyses in his notebook. It was labeled Hero Analysis for the future #1. Every quirk he saw was documented there. He'd draw the quirk holder, write down the quirk and how he thought it worked, then little comments and solutions to improve their quirk. Izuku didn't actually use his analysis until 4th grade. He had only gave Kaken some suggestions about his quirk when they were walking home. Apparently, Kaken had actually paid attention to his muttering, which he called information overload because there was too much information in his mind. He forgot his mind-to-mouth filter and heard about his suggestion to use his quirk like a rocket and launch himself into the air. The next day, Kaken was soaring through the sky in front of the school and he yelled, "Thanks, Zuku." Izuku crumbled as multiple eyes stared at him. "I didn't do anything," Izuku muttered. The bell rang and everyone started rushing to class, but that wasn't the end of it. "Hey Zuku!" Kaken exclaimed as he sat next to Izuku. "Yes, Kaken?" Izuku asked. He unpacked his mom's bento and placed it on his desk. "Give me more tips," he demanded. "Tea-tips?" Izuku asked nervously, feeling the heavy looks their other classmates were giving them. "You analyzed my quirk, so give me some tips on it," Kaken demanded. "You can collect your sweat into a container and then activate it to make a larger explosion. You can use your quirk by spraying your sweat like a water gun and activating it. Your sweat can be put on the ground and used as a trap, like a minefield. The Nayukanal so make our sweat and tagarinade sant the Nayukanusyo can soin around to create a tunnel effect explosion be constantly making explosion san. Breath. Kaken ordered. Gehel iv. I still have more, but I think the bell just rang. Izuku commented. They walked home that day with new ideas in their minds. Ever since that day, other students started asking him for suggestions to improve their quirks. From second graders to middle schoolers. All the student needed was a demonstration of their quirk and a quick explanation of how it worked. Izuku got more popular and more time to work on his analysis quirk. He didn't only think about the quirk of a person, but he thought about the personality of the person. If they didn't have the courage to do it, they might not be able to. He also learned how to assess the weaknesses and strengths of a quirk. Izuku was now dubbed the advisor. The people who asked for his advice would improve their quirk in a day. He'd bring them to the park, give them advice and leave it to their self to figure out how to do it. Since quirk use was illegal, he didn't actually train them but he did give them suggestions. Of course with the popularity, rumors grew too. Apparently he was an adult in a child's body that was forced to help children because of something bad he did. It varies but that was the most popular one. Only Kaken was his real friend. Elementary school continued with random strangers asking him for help with their quirks. He didn't accept all of them, but he was still busy. Izuku wanted to help everyone, but Mom and Kaken reminded him not all strangers were to be trusted. One quirk was a warping quirk. He seemed gentlemanly and kind. His name was Kurogiri. Izuku had suggested spreading his fog out more to create larger portals. Multiple portals might be a possibility too. Portals on the ground may be good as traps. He would have loved more time on that quirk but unfortunately, Kurogiri was there for a short period of time. Another quirk was a brainwashing one. His name was Hitoshi Shinso. He had a low self-esteem and was hesitant to use his quirk. It was apparently a villainous quirk. Well, Izuku told him to ignore the bullies and focus on his goal. His quirk could be used to calm people down. He could possibly train it to control multiple people. His quirk could also be used to stop a villain. If he stopped the villain, he could apprehend him and be the hero. Hitoshi just laughed and walked away. Izuku's elementary school was fun and exciting. He had almost forgotten about being quirkless and that having an analysis quirk was just an act. It was like he was a normal preteen. Nothing changed over time until middle school began. "Your dad just died," was the first thing his mom said to him when Izuku came home. "What?" Izuku asked in shock. "Your dad?" "What?" Izuku exclaimed. "I know. It's hard to process, but..." Mom started tears in the corners of her eyes. She was barely holding it in. "No, not that. Dad was the one who sent you money and you're a stay-home mom. How are we supposed to get money and live? How are we going to pay for the groceries and the house? How are we going to pay for all of this?" Izuku panicked. He knew he should have been sad about his dad, but Izuku never actually met him. He only knew that he was the one sending him money which was vital. His analysis skills got the better of him and thought about all the trouble they were in. It just didn't process that a family member had died. "Izuku breath," Mom said calmly. "But..." "Calm down. I can just get a job." Mom explained. "I hope you are doing well too," Izuku said, hugging his mom tightly. His mind calmed down and actually processed the loss. His dad just died. How did his mom feel about this? She had loved him enough to marry him. "Right, thanks honey," Mom reassured him. Izuku hesitantly walked to his room and slumped in front of his computer. Despite what his mother had said, he was going to do something. He just didn't know what. There wasn't much he could do for money. No one was going to hire a middle schooler. Kids would only get small jobs if they could. But if he did work on online, it may work. Then again, he might be able to track his computer and get to his mom. Izuku knew that it probably wasn't a good idea, but he didn't really have a choice. Izuku created a small website for quirk analysis. It was called Deku's Advice. Izuku could also be read as Deku, so he just put those together. He also stopped giving people suggestions. He would instead ask all the customers to come to the Deku's Advice website. The customer would send him a message and a description of their quirk. Every tip was 300 yen. Since he didn't own a credit card, he asked him to send it through the mail. It wasn't his real address, but a building close to his house. That couldn't work for long, but maybe later he would actually get his own debit card? The website had easily gained popularity. There wasn't a lot of people that made this websites. They would usually go to the Quirk counselor. But since technology began to rise, people started to look at his website. He was finally started helping his mom now. Sometimes he even earned more money than his mom. She had gotten about 3,500 yen per hour while he got 5,000 yen per hour. It was easy for him to come up with suggestions, and most customers paid for multiple tips, so that helped too. His website grew larger and larger and his time kept being used up. It was harder because mom wouldn't accept his money. She thought his friend was giving him money, but he was working for her. So, Izuku ended up slipping her the money. He'd leave it in random places for her to find. At least she accepted that. He couldn't leave big amounts of money, so he ended up with a lot of extra money. This allowed him to improve his website and make it better. School was getting harder since he was getting more busier and didn't have time to study. He had even stopped his judo lessons since they cost too much money and time. Izuku was now in the 3rd year of middle school. They were talking about high schools now and exams. The teacher was reading out the schools that they all selected. Midoriya Izuku, you want to go to UA? The teacher asked. Why yes, maybe for heroics or business. Izuku replied sheepishly. Suku, don't let those losers beat you. Kaken bellowed. Oh, of course not, Izuku responded unbothered. He knew that was Kaken's way to accept him going to UA. They still had a couple from months to train for the entrance exam. Kaken and Izuku had both started to train harder. Izuku learned to target weak points, build up stamina and do other moves. Kaken worked on his moves. He'd only train for an hour and then go home since he had his job to do. He didn't expect to be attacked going home. This would be the perfect body, was the only thing he heard before being surrounded by a slimy green liquid. What was this? He started to struggle. Only 30 more seconds, just stop trying, kid. The slime said, chuckling. What stopped slime? This was like a mucus? Salt stopped mucus? He didn't have any. What else? What else? What else? Izuku was panicking by the second. His vision started blurring. The next thing he knew, Izuku was on the ground coughing up pieces of slime. My boy, are you all right? Asked a strangely familiar voice. Why yeah, he replied. He looked up at the buff figure of All Might. All Might! Izuku exclaimed. He fumbled through his scattered belongings and found his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13. See, can you sign my B-book? Of course I can. All Might exclaims. He quickly signs it and hands he back to Izuku with a large smile. Thanks, All Might. Izuku says, I have a question. I'm sorry my boy, but I have to leave. All Might explains as he turned to jump. Wait. Izuku abandons all logic and reasoning and grabbed onto the man's leg. Let go. All Might yells as he attempts to shake the boy off his leg. I'd die if I left go. Izuku counters. The hero sighs and lands on the ground. Izuku's wobbly legs touch the ground. Suddenly, a puff of smoke appears and instead of the bulky figure of All Might, it was a thin figure of an unknown man. But he seemed familiar. All Might? What kid? The hero asks harshly. Do you think I can be a hero without a quirk? Izuku asks, hopeful. You can't expect me to say you can. You could get hurt, and without a quirk you can't defend yourself, All Might says, making all these excuses. You can join the police force? Izuku is just in shock. His idol doesn't believe in him. It didn't affect him like he thought it would. Of course people weren't like their television self. He walks back down the road to his house, not really paying attention to anything. Then, shouts disrupt his small bubble. He follows the shouts. It's got a kid. Where are the heroes? There are heroes and civilians surrounding a villain and a hostage. He weaves through the crowds and sees two familiar pleading red eyes held hostage by the slime villain that he attacked him minutes before. It was Kaken. Izuku quickly analyzed the situation. It only took 30 seconds for the slime villain to take over the hostage's body. Everything around the villain was slime, and you couldn't really harm it, but it did have eyes. They weren't made of slime. He rushed forward and flings his backpack at the villain's vulnerable eyes. Kaken, Rocket! Izuku shouts. I know Z. Kaken shouts as the force of the explosions flings him into the air. The heroes swarm in and swiftly apprehends the slime villain. They start lecturing him about running into dangerous situations, but praised him for his fast thinking and amazing use of Quirk. Kaken is praised about staying calm, but he's just more angry at that. He didn't mind the lecturing, since it was his decision to run into a dangerous situation. Izuku was just tired. The middle schooler walked home to do his job and to train more. In the next few months, he also started training with a staff. Heroes had weapons and it wasn't against the rules about not using a weapon. Izuku researched the entrance exam and studied for the written exam. Some of his classmates thought he would get into business because of his analysis quirk, but Izuku was determined to be a hero. The entrance exam was his chance. He stood in front of the massive gates of UA. Izuku confidently strolled into the school. That was only on the outside. In his mind he was just panicked and filled with anxiety, but he didn't want to embarrass himself. There were probably cameras and other security measures and he didn't want his first impression to be falling face into the ground. Everything was just overwhelming. The written portion of the test was easier than he thought. He might have overstudied just a bit. There were some questions where analysis typed which made it easier. It was the practical test that he was worried about. Despite training, he wasn't as strong. People with stronger and more durable bodies would obviously be better than him. But Izuku could outsmart them and get in. That was what he hoped. But he wasn't going to push anyone down to get in. He gathered up his courage and followed the rest of the examiners. When they strolled into the auditorium to talk about the practical exam, his mind just went overload. It was Present Mike in real life. One of the heroes that he had seen on TV was going to talk to them about the practical exam. Welcome young listeners to the physical exam. In this exam, you will be using your abilities and strength to destroy robots. There are different types of robots since villains aren't always the same. The screen that was behind him flickered on. It showed an image of 3 robots. The one pointer is the weakest, with thin armor and gives you 1 villain point. The next one is a 2-pointer. They are made for speed and have thin armor. The 3-pointer has the strong and thick armor. The 3-point robot is the hardest. Its head may be extra protected. The robot had armor on all parts of its body. Heavy armor areas are on the back, the front, the head, the legs and the arms. The sides are probably the most vulnerable. I could probably use my staff and lodge the wiring out, but I have to do that before anyone else gets the robot. There could be some secret points during the test. I have to, Izuku mutters softly. You! Exclaimed a robot boy. Yes. Izuku questioned, nervously. Stop mumbling. You're distracting everyone. Also, the handout shows 4 types of robots. It's shameful that a prestigious school like UA makes a mistake like this. The robot boy exclaims. Young listener, that is not a mistake. That is the 0-pointer. You do not get any points from destroying this. Present Mike informed them. Everyone was then sorted into groups. He was unfortunately in the robot boys group, Group B. They walked to the city B for the assessment. They had 5 cities in all because they were that rich. Present Mike stopped in front of the city and turned towards them. Well, what are you waiting for? Go! Present Mike exclaimed. All the examiners rushed through the entrance. Izuku clung onto the robot boy's arm and when they were in the center, waved him off and got ready to fight. He took his retractable staff out of his pocket. With his staff, he lunged at the 1-pointer robot and swipes its legs from under itself. A strong thrust dented the robot. He continued to stab it until broke the wires in the 1-pointer. This wasn't going to work. It was taking too long. Hadn't have else other time to think. Running off, the kid stabbed the robots on the side and on its legs. But he was right, it wasn't enough. Izuku knew beating things up wasn't the only thing a hero did. There must be another way. He wouldn't get into the hero course by slowly destroying robots. So far, he had only gotten 20 points, but that wasn't going to be enough. Rescue? The first thing a hero does is save the people. There were some people stuck under the rumble and robots. Which was weird, since it was a hero school and people could get seriously harmed doing that, but this was what rescue points for. He pushed a staff under the fallen robot that had trapped a couple of examiners. It was nothing compared to the others. Izuku had to work harder. That robot is huge. It's the 0-pointer. It's useless. Run. Izuku started to run, but he saw a small figure under the 0-pointer. He turned back and ran at the massive robot. Looking closer, he starts to see that it was a girl. A girl? Her body was pinned down by the rubble the robot caused, and it was coming closer to the struggling figure. Izuku ran faster. He needed to stop it, but how? Its armor is almost impenetrable and it was huge. The bigger, the slower it walks, but he couldn't trip it. It would just fall on the girl and him or create a bigger mess. He was thinking about this wrong. Izuku only needed to save the girl. Hey, I'm going to help you get out. Izuku shouted. What's your quirk? Zero gravity. I can manipulate gravity. She answered weakly. Can you lift the rock? Just a little so I can pull you out. Izuku asked. She nodded and proceeded to lift the rock a tiny bit. It was enough to let Izuku pull her out. They turned to run. The 0-pointer was looming above of them. The test is over. I only got 20 points, he sighed. That probably wasn't enough to get in. The hopeful students all walked out of the school. Izuku followed the stream of students in a slump. Aizawa was looking at the files of the new students. One quirk was explosions while another were pop-off. Honestly, they seemed like a lot of work. He could feel himself getting headaches already. Well, he didn't have to do all the work. With a quick message, Aizawa had sent Deku his 20 students' quirks. He needed to know the dangers of their quirk and how to improve them. It would probably be answered later in the week. All he wanted to do is sleep. Izuku was stressed out. All he did was eat, work and sleep. He wasn't sure if he got in or not, and he didn't apply to any other schools. If he didn't get into UA, he was dead. Working on the quirks given to him gave him some relief. Ironically, some user named Dead_Tired gave him quirks like explosions, analyzing and gravity manipulation. He didn't think much of it. There was bound to be some people with the same quirks. The day the letter arrived, he was sleeping on at the breakfast table. Work kept him up all night. Honestly, how many quirks were being sent to him? Normally it was 30 days, but yesterday, hundreds of quirks was given to him. All for different reasons. That earned him a lot of money, but he was teenager, shouldn't be worried about working. A small hand shook him awake. Izuku sleepily questioned. Izuku, your letter from UA is here. Mom responded softly. He jerked awake, grabbed the letter and opened it. A weird metallic machine fell out. They wouldn't give anyone a machine to tell the kid they didn't get in right? He turned it on to see the hologram image of All Might. Hello Midoriya Izuku. You have aced the written exam, but only gotten 20 villain points. Sadly, that does not qualify you for the hero course. Izuku's heart fell at part. So he wasn't getting in Yuta. But that's not all. They showed clips of him saving students, but the one that stood out was the last clip. The girl he saved was offering him points. Being a hero doesn't only mean beating the villain. It means protecting and saving other people. By saving multiple examiners and running towards the 0-pointer to save that girl when everyone else ran away, you gained 70 recuse points. You are first in the exam. Congratulations Midoriya Izuku, this is your hero academia. Izuku was speechless. He had gotten in UA. There were no other words. Mom. Izuku. I'm so happy for you. Mom exclaimed, hugging him. He stood in front of the Class A door. Just as he was about to walk in, a voice stopped him. Hey, green-haired guy, exclaimed the familiar gravity girl. Hello, are you alright? Izuku asked, worried. Your leg was trapped and... I'm fine. I'm Uraraka Ochako, and you? Midoriya Izuku. It took 7 seconds for you to calm down. If you came here to make friends, I suggest you chose another department. This is the heroics course. Those was the first words the figure in the yellow sleeping bag had said to his class. Then they realized it was a teacher. Izuku and Uraraka walked into the large door. The other students all quickly sat at their seats and the teacher went up front. He pulled out some P uniforms from his sleeping bag and placed it on his desk. I'm Aizawa Shoyuda. Put these on and go to the P grounds, said the teacher as he left. The man was waiting for them out of the sleeping bag. Izuku immediately knew that this was the underground hero Eraserhead. the scarf and Google gave him away. Since he didn't have enough time to see who was in his class, Izuku looked around here. He could see Kaken, the robot guy that pointed him out, and a few other familiar faces from the entrance exam. This is the Quirk apprehension test. You will have to complete multiple tests with your quirks. Last one gets expelled. This is the pitch. Midoriya, go first. Aizawa said. My quirk eye isn't really an offensive one. Izuku explained. Izuku Midoriya, tied in first with Bakugo Katsuki, analysis quirk, right? Go, if you refuse, you will immediately be expelled. His teacher said. How would he use his quirk here? Think of another way. Normal rules didn't apply here. His legs were stronger than his arms. He threw the ball in the air and kicked it as hard as he could. 48 meters. Aizawa said. You are not supposed to kick the ball. This is, exclaimed the robot boy. This isn't our regular pitch. I used my Q quirk. With my analysis quirk, I saw that my legs are stronger than my arms. Izuku looked to Aizawa to see if he was right. Fortunately, he nodded, which meant it counts. That is true. I am sorry. The boy gave him a 90-degree bow. It's all right, Izuku nervously responded. The quirk assessment began. There was the strength grip test, the toe touch, the high jump, the 40-meter dash, and multiple others. He was always near the bottom 10. He didn't have a very good quirk for physical activity, but he did train. There was a familiar purple-haired hypothesis named Shinso. He was doing a lot worse than him, but he was trying. There was an invisible girl named Hagakure who also was lacking behind. Others with different quirks like Jiru, who had earphone quirk, and Ashido, who had an acid quirk. This test just wasn't fair. How does an invisible girl use her quirk to run? It was made more for stealth. Then earphones and acid quirks wouldn't help either. Earphones were for stealth and acid could destroy some things. They did not help with strength. This quirk assessment was very unfair and didn't measure a student's true potential. But there might be a point to this. His final rank was 17th place. A guy named Todoroki got in first. Kaken was second. A girl named Yaoyorozu got third. The last place was Shinso Hitoshi. Everyone was staring at him. Shinso, Iwaza began to say. Wait, Izuku interrupted. This quirk assessment test doesn't measure a person's full potential. Shinsu's quirk can stop people from panicking in multiple situations, stop villains in an instant, and save the citizens trapped. Also, Ashido's acid quirk can possibly melt the rubble that traps people in dangerous situations so she can pull them out easier, but she only got 15th place. Jiru can use her quirk to spy on villains to stop them faster, and she was 18th. So I do not think that you should expel anyone in this class due to their ranking on a bias test. We are here to learn. Of course we're not all pros now, but we will be if you teach us. Everyone stared at him. Suddenly, it all caught up to him. His cheeks immediately flushed red in embarrassment. I was going to say, Shinso, you are not expelled. This was only a ruse to bring out your fullest potential. Aizawa explained. Izuku, stay here after school. Izuku shivered. That was probably bad. Class A began to walk back into the class to complete their other lessons. Midoriya, the way you talked to Aizawa was amazing. I couldn't do that. Uraraka exclaimed. Thanks, but I think I got in trouble for that, Izuku said with a laugh. Midoriya, I am Ida Tenya from Sumai Academy. I have misjudged you, you aren't the delinquent I thought you was. But it's not a good idea to talk back to the teacher. Ida kept talking and lecturing them. There were normal classes after that. He learned more about his new classmates and teachers. Most of them were heroes. He couldn't help muttering about them during their class. But Izuku was mostly worried about after school. He had no idea why he was called out, but it probably wouldn't be a good reason. Bye. Izuku waved. See you tomorrow, Midoriya. Uraraka exclaimed. Farewell, my classmates. Ida said. Izuku smiled and walked back into the school. Aizawa was there waiting for him. Midoriya, the principal is waiting for you. Aizawa said tiredly. The principal? Izuku stammered. Why would the principal want to see him? Yes, the principal, now go. Aizawa ordered. Erase her head. Izuku walked towards the principal's office glumly. He really didn't want to be expelled or in trouble on the first day. So he did know me, Aizawa mused as he left. Izuku walked in to see a bear mouse thing? Are you the P principal? Well, you could say so. But I'm more interested in you, Deku. Dedu? Izuku exclaims nervously, what are you talking about? You do know that Izuku can be read as Deku. That and the speech you gave today was nearly identical to the one Deku gave Aizawa, or dead under skirt. Nezu asks, amused. Aizawa's dead under skirt? Izuku exclaims, connecting the dots on his head. He did give him 20 quirks that were identical to his classmates. The fact that you know the username dead_tired also confirms that you are Deku. Am I going to be expelled? Izuku moves backwards towards the door. No, I didn't call you here to expel you. I called you here to give you an offer. An offer? Yes, Midoriya Izuku, would you like to intern under me? I intern under you, the super genius? We would have to switch one of your classes for this, but that is only if you accept. Izuku hesitated. It was an one-in-a-lifetime offer. Accept. What class is going to be changed? English, you are fluent, right? How did why you know? Your website has multiple translations and one of them is English. It is also a world-known website and English is the universal language. I imagine it would be hard to communicate without knowing English. Nezu explained. That is true, Izuku responded glumly. He couldn't believe his long-held secret was revealed on the first. Nezu was a super genius. Alright, we agree that your English class is changed to an internship with me. Come to my office for the internship. See you tomorrow, Midoriya Izuku. Nezu exclaimed, waving him off. Izuku left the office. His life was somehow getting a lot more hectic. Foundational hero studies were before Nezu's internship and he was not looking towards it. He heard from other students that All Might was teaching that class. The last time he saw All Might was the Silmi attack. I am entering the classroom like a normal person. All Might yells as he enters Izuku's classroom. All Might. He's wearing his Silver Age costume. The room erupts into chatter. Everyone follow me to the training area for a live battle simulation. All Might exclaims. Izuku stood up with the rest of his class and followed the big hulking figure of All Might. They had to put on their costumes that they had gotten earlier. Izuku's costume was a black jumpsuit with a dark green cape that could glide. It included high-tech Google that meganized his view, a belt with tools in it, such as his staff that had a few upgrades, first aid kit, ECT, and his boots and gloves were flame-resistant. He designed it more for speed and not flashiness like his other classmates. Kaken's costume looked like a lot of explosions. Uraraka's was similar to a pink astronaut. He couldn't even see Hagakure's costume. She was completely invisible. Your costume is really cool, Zuku. Uraraka cheerfully exclaimed. Why you too? He responded. In this live battle simulation, there will be a team of heroes and a team of villains. The hero's objective is to either apprehend the fake nuke or capture the villains. The villain's objective is to capture the heroes or keep the fake nuke until the time runs out. You will have 5 minutes. Some groups have already been made while others will be picked out. First up is Midoriya and Bakugo on the heroes group with Ida and Uraraka on the villains group. All Might directs them to the building to start the live battle simulation. The building looked like a block of concrete. Uraraka and Ida were sent to the fake nuke while Kaken and Izuku planned their attack. I have a plan, and a backup plan, and another one, and Izuku starts. Just give me the first 2 and stop the fucking mumbling. Kaken growls. Okay, they will probably send Ida out to capture us since he has engine quirk. Uraraka will probably be the one to protect the nuke. You can distract and capture Ida while I sneak in to grab the nuke. But I can distract Lida by gathering all his attention towards me and you focus on Uraraka. Those are probably my main plans. If they're both together, I can use my staff to make a hole while you wait underneath the nuke and I'll distract them. When the hole falls, you fly up and grab the nuke. Or we can just charge in and Izuku was stopped by Kaken. First one, and what did I just say about your muttering? Kaken exclaims. Not to do it, Izuku glumly answers. They go into the building. Kaken stomps off and grumbles about a four-eyed bastard. Izuku runs off and looks for the nuke. There wasn't a lot to look for, but he had to be cautious. Ida or Uraraka could capture him. He looked around for the rocket. It was the last floor he checked. As he thought, Uraraka was guarding it. She had used her quirk to lift the nuke to the ceiling. Izuku knew he couldn't get it be charging in since he wouldn't be able to reach it. So, he goes to the floor above. Maybe he could get to the rocket from the top. Izuku begins to stab the floor, making cracks and dents in a circle. His strength might not be enough, but he had to try. All his training couldn't be for nothing. Explosions kept ringing through the building. He hoped Uraraka thought this was one too. With one last stab at the center, the floor flew away and he was falling towards the flying nuke. Kaken was also in the room, flying towards it. Uraraka and Ida were also running towards them. They grabbed it at the same time. The speakers said, "Hero team wins." The hero team jumped off the nuke just as it started to fall. "It would be easier if I knew you both could fly," Uraraka pouted. She has pieces of the building on her costume, but other than that she was fine. I was falling." Izuku counters. "You did a marvelous job. I am bitter that you won, but you were the better of us." Ida says. His hair is a bit burnt and his glasses are blackened. "Hey, we're going bastards." Kaken reminds them. The hero and villain team walks out off the building. They reach All Might and they begin to talk. "Great job, young Midoriya and young Bakugo. You also did well, young Uraraka and young Ida. Now students, who do you think is the MVP?" All Might asks all of them. Midoriya, Yaoyorozu answers. "That is correct, young Yaoyorozu. But why?" All Might questions. Midoriya was the one who came up with the plans. When he saw an obstacle, he expertly passed it. Bakugo just bothered Ida, and then ran towards the nuke. But that was Midoriya's plan too. Uraraka had a good idea by lifting the nuke in the air, but that didn't work. Ida chased Bakugo into the nuke room, which increased his chance of recovering the nuke. Which is why Midoriya is the MVP in his battle simulation. The class was silent. "Yes, that is also correct," All Might praised. Next group is Todoroki and Hagakure as the hero team with Ojiro and Jairu as the villain team. The matches continued with Todoroki and Hagakure winning. Heroes Shinso and Kirishima win against Aoyama and Ishido by brainwashing them. Villains Tsuyu and Kaminari won against Koda and Sato when Tsuyu captures Koda and Sato with Kaminari's help. Tokoyami and Yaoyorozu capture Shoji and Siro with a net cannon Yaoyorozu created. They're all tired by the time the class ends. Izuku nearly forgets Nezu's internship, until Present Mike reminds him and all his classmates stare at him. Izuku arrives at the principal's office, tired, nervous, and worried. He steps in to see a skeleton thin man that seems familiar. All Might. And no. The thin figure denied, "I'm not All Might. I don't even look like him. You're wearing the same clothes and your hair looks the same." Izuku bluntly stated. The thin figure looks at Nezu. You can trust him. He would have found out later. Midoriya is the famous Deku. Nezu reveals, causing Izuku to groan. Another person knew his identity. "You're Deku?" All Might exclaimed. "Just don't tell anyone." Izuku hesitantly said, "Are you busy with Nezu?" "No, I'm leaving," All Might apologized. "And I'm sorry, young Midoriya." The skeleton figure of the #1 hero left the office. "Do you have a grudge against All Might?" Nezu curiously asked. "I might, he once told me I couldn't be a hero." Izuku says. He doesn't want to be mad at his favorite hero, but after all his hard work to become a hero, he was a little mad. "You already proved that you have the abilities to be a hero." Nezu reassures him. "Well, let's start the lesson." Nezu began with giving him quirks and seeing how his analyzing worked. There was a phasing quirk and a copying quirk. It depended on the side effects. With the phasing quirk, nothing can harm the person since it would all go through them. But if the quirk user has a limit, they should only use it to stop punches or go through obstacles. They should do more offensive training than defensive training because they has the perfect defense. The quirk user could be a great rescue hero too, since they can go through things. If they can phrase other people, that would help. The copying quirk would be extremely useful, but the user would have no experience with the quirk they are using. If it was a fire quirk they copied, their opponent would have the advantage because they learned how to use it. If the user could use multiple quirks, then they could learn how to balance them and use them all together. The user should practice other quirks. Time limits were also important. If they could only use it for a certain time frame, it could harm them. Like if a copied acid quirk suddenly disappeared and the acid harmed the user. He mumbled all this to Nezu. First, I need to teach you how to organize your thoughts. There is no pattern and your mind is just chaos. Nezu advised. How? Start by talking about the dangers of the quirk. Then the advantages of the quirk. After, the tips of the quirk and how to start training. Other advice can be added at the end. Now, try a vine quirk. The user can use the vines on her head to do anything she wants them to. Well, an opponent can grab the vines and pull the user towards them to harm the user. I'm not sure if it will hurt for the vines to be cut, but that is also a possibility. The vines can also be tangled and twisted. Vines are usually blunt and they're not really good for attacking. But if the user can train the quirk, they can capture villains, attack and defend. They're long, strong and if trained, can be quick. The user can start by learning to capture with their vines because that's probably the most useful. Maybe with multiple vines they can create a large force to push the opponent away. By surrounding the user with vines, they may be able to create a barrier to protect their self from harm. They can also use their vines to get into hard-to-reach places. Their vines, if trained, can be used to lift obstacles out of the way of citizens that need help. To train, I recommend strength and resistance training to make their vines stronger and practicing moving their vines quicker. Izuku answered. Nezu looked at Izuku with amazement. You live up to your reputation. Nezu praises. Thank you. Izuku responds. Did you write any other analysis down in a notebook or something like it? Nezu questions. It would be useful to see Izuku's other observations. Weiss, I'll bring it for the next lesson. Alright, how fast can you analysis the weakness or strength of a quirk? About 20 to 30 seconds maybe? We need to lower that number. Analyze my quirk, starting now. You can probably see my physical weaknesses and strengths and will aim for that. Any weapons you bring will be able to neutralize my strengths, since I don't have an offensive quirk. I would probably aim to stop your weapon because without it you're weaker. With my staff I'm break the machinery or capture you and your weapon. 23 seconds. Good for your first attempt, but not enough to beat me. Nezu pulls out some files. Analyze and write these down. He gets multiple other quirks, like Pop-Off, the ability to take off balls from the user's head, and Big Fist, a large fist. Izuku was told to return after school again and by the end of that class, his mind was as tired as his body from the other class. He walked towards the cafeteria half dead. Izuku met up with Uraraka and Ida who had waved him over to their table. Hello. Izuku greeted as he slid into a chair. Hello. Ida responded. How was internship with Nezu? I can't believe you didn't tell us, Zuku. Uraraka whined. I just found out yesterday and I don't have your phone number. Izuku explained, while taking out his bento. Then I'll give it to you. It's XXXXXXXX. Uraraka cheerfully answered. We'll give you my number as well, for emergencies. Ida gave him his number. They exchanged phone numbers. Izuku was internally screaming because he had gained 2 new friends, right? So far, Hino had 4 numbers. His mom, Kaken, Uraraka and Ida. High school was starting off great, he decided. Does that mean we're... Izuku was interrupted. Hey, it was Shinso Hitoshi. Hello, Izuku responded cautiously. Greetings, fellow classmate. Ida waved. Hi, want to sit with us? Uraraka asked. No, I just want to talk to Midoriya. Shinso says. All right. Here. Okay, in the hallway? Yeah. Bye guys. Izuku exclaims to the worried pair. He follows the purple-haired boy into the hallway. Right after they get out, Shinso turns towards him. Thank you, Shinso says. For what? He is very confused. Your advice let me pass the entrance exam. You told me my quirk wasn't a villain's quirk and helped me improve it. You're probably the reason why I'm here. I'd probably be in general studies if you didn't help me. Izuku was speechless because wow. He didn't think he did much. I just wanted to thank you, sorry for dragging you away from your friends. Shinso says. Shinso, you're my friend too. Do you want to join us? Izuku offers. He nods hesitantly. Izuku gives him a blinding smile and walks back into the cafeteria. They go back to the table and chat till the bell rings. The next classes are normal high subjects. The only strange part was Aizawa telling Todoroki, Tokoyami and Shinso to start staying after school to see a Quirk counselor. Izuku didn't realize that he was going to be the counselor. When he walked back to Nezu's office, Todoroki, Tokoyami, Shinso were there waiting. Hey, what are you doing here? Izuku questions. We're here for the Quirk counseling. Shinso informs him when the others fail too. The door opens and Nezu, the bear mouse, walks out. I see you met your Quirk counselor, Nezu comments. This is Midoriya Izuku. What? Izuku shouts. He was not told this. The other students seem to be amused, especially Shinso. That is why I called you here after school. Why else? To teach me or something. And not for me to do counseling. How do you even counsel? Izuku exclaims. Quirk counseling is counseling to help a person grow stronger mentally to improve their quirk usage. Students, follow me to U.A's. First gym. Nezu began to walk down the hallway towards the UA gym. They followed Nezu, quickly increasing their pace as Nezu started running. Students and heroes gave them weird looks when they passed them, but since the principal wasn't stopping it, why should they? They only realized Nezu was tricking them at the third lap. While the others did. Izuku was waiting for them at the first gym. Suddenly the doors burst open and 3 students and a smug bear mouse appeared. Alright, now give me a small demonstration of your quirk. Nezu ordered cheerfully. But... Izuku exclaimed. Nezu gave him one look and he instantly closed his mouth. Todoroki began with his ice quirk. He used it to move to different areas. Since there wasn't anything to fight, he couldn't demonstrate his fighting or capturing. Izuku analyzed him and started to write down the information rapidly. Shinso had to ask for help since his quirk only worked on other people. He used his quirks on multiple people and made them do multiple things such as handstands and cartwheels. But if they were harmed, the person would snap out of his control. Tokoyami's demonstration involved switching the lights off and on. When it was dark, his quirk was nearly uncontrollable. He seemed a lot more weaker when it was light, but he could still move and control his quirk. They were all short demonstrations, but it was enough for Izuku to write a whole page on. After that part, they walked to his office, which he had no idea he had. Tokoyami and Shinso waited outside while Todoroki sat with him in his office. So, Izuku started, nervously. You can give me the advice quickly so we can get this over with. Todoroki offered. Oh, you have a half-hot half-cold quirk. If you use too much of the cold quirk, you could probably get hypothermia. You should use your fire quirk. No. But without it, you would be using half your strength and it'd be more dangerous. Your body can't handle the ice for long periods of time. You'd get hypothermia or frostbite. No. Why? Why is using this half of your quirk bad? You're hurting yourself. No. I can be a hero without that quirk. You can't be a hero if you're hurt or injured. It could just heal. I don't need to use his quirk. Oh, your quirk is your own. It doesn't belong to anyone but yourself. It's a hot and cold quirk, not a cold quirk. No, with that Todoroki left. The 2 other students looked into the office confused. Izuku had just sighed. His first time quirk counseling just failed. Well, Shinso, you can come in. Shinso, how are you doing with your quirk? Izuku asks, attempting to be professional. Good. I'm just going to give you some tips about your quirk. Izuku explained. Shinso nods. Some dangers of your quirk are focusing too much on the person you're hypnotizing. I noticed that when the people in your control get harmed, they come out of your control. So be careful of that. The good thing is that you can make the person or people you control do things that, without your quirk, they couldn't do. You can also quickly defuse a hostage situation or a panicking situation. You can also use your quirk by just telling your opponent to send themselves to the police. You have to hide your weakness, so try using short quick commands. Your eyes kind of glow, just a little, which tells someone you're controlling another person, so you might need to use goggles. Since your quirk isn't an offensive one, you have to train in fighting and use tricks. Maybe tell the support department to build quirk suppressing handcuffs, or something to stall the villain. Izuku says, running out of breath. I will consider that. Most of your advice I already used anyway. Shinso leaves without another word. Izuku just sighs. So far all his clients walked out by themselves. Tokoyami, you can come in. Izuku calls out to his last client. The student stands at the door awkwardly. You can sit down. Tokoyami does. There is still a tense atmosphere hanging around. It probably because the first and last person he gave advice to walked out of the office without his consent. It was half of his fault since he poked at Todoroki's fire issue, but he wasn't sure what he did to Shinso. Your quirk is Dark Shadow. The most dangerous part of that quirk is the loss of control. Sunlight is also a weakness. Some people could make you use your quirk intentionally, which could cause you to cause a lot of harm. With your quirk, you could take down a lot of powerful villains by controlling Dark Shadow and capturing him with your shadows. Blocking paths could also be helpful. They can attack quickly and deadly. You can maybe make traps in dark places because your quirk is a shadow one. I'm not sure if it can create other items, but long distance might be a problem. Your Dark Shadow can protect you from close by fighting, but it might not sense a long distance attack. So you train in another weapon. Also you might be able to control your Dark Shadow a little with a strong, modified flashlight. The support department could help with that. Defense can be a shield of shadows if your Dark Shadow can deflect it. Izuku says slowly and firmly. Any questions? Tokoyami looks a bit shocked. Izuku couldn't really tell because of his bird head. Emotions weren't his best ability. Besides, he wasn't sure how the bird head affected Tokoyami. He could have bird emotions or human emotions, maybe a little of both. No, thank you. Tokoyami replies, can I leave? Why yes. The last student leaves, which left Izuku alone in a small office. Well, Izuku says to himself, that was exhausting. Talking to yourself? Nechu asks Amuse. I can't have my intern becoming crazy, can I? If I'm crazy, then what are you? Izuku says, tired. Sane. Nezu replies. How did your counseling go? You probably watched from the cameras. Izuku answers. 1 out of 3. Not doing so good, are you? This was a recent development that you failed to inform me of. Izuku tiredly says. Can I go home now? Sure, but tomorrow during my internship, you will be continue counseling students. Nezu informs him. Izuku returned to his house ready to sleep and maybe eat some katsudon. Then he is reminded of homework. The next few days followed a similar pattern to the second day. Their Foundential Heroes class involved battle training in the gym. Nezu tired Izuku by making his counsel other students as his internship. There was some of his other classmates and then other random people. Some from general education, class 1B, and even from other years. Their quirks were interesting too, but most of them, for some reason, just get up and leave. He also got to personalize his office, but not by a lot. The other classes seemed normal to the first two, but they were all taught by heroes. What also occurs during those days was All Might stalking Izuku. That's what Izuku says, but it's more like any time the hero sees him, which is every day, he attempts to apologize to Izuku. He just ignores it by turning away or talking to someone else. All Might would also come to him in his other form. The thin, skeleton one. He was called Yagi on that form. Izuku didn't give him a glance. Even though he wants to help All Might, and the skeleton figure is making him pity him, just a bit. The dislike of All Might wasn't hidden at all. You couldn't miss the huge figure of All Might. The fact that Izuku pretends to not see him or talks to someone else when he arrives is very noticeable. Izuku also had a habit of murmuring random facts about heroes he sees, but he doesn't when All Might comes close, even though he has the most information on All Might. His friends asks him questions, but Izuku doesn't answer. Hey, why does All Might keep coming to you? Uraraka curiously asks. He's just checking on me. I am kind of reckless. Izuku chuckles, completely dodging the conversation. That's true. Remember when Zuku? The question was still at the back of their mind. Maybe Izuku would forgive him, but that day wasn't today. Today, we are picking a class president and vice president. I don't care how you chose, just pick them. Aizawa starts the class. Then he promptly leaves. I say, Ida says before he's cut off. Sweet. I want to be president. Who's gonna pick? I say we vote. Yayarozu's voice is here from the chaos of the class. That is a great idea, Yayarozu. We should vote. Ida exclaims with a few robotic hand movements. The class begins to vote. They write up names and put tally marks next to the name they think is the best president. The ending result was Izuku with 4 votes and Yayarozu with 3 votes. Izuku was named the president and Yayarozu was the vice president. What? Izuku shouts, "This must be wrong." Aizawa heard the commotion and came back in. What's done is done. Aizawa declares and continues to teach the class. What happened during lunch was just a blur in his mind. There was a blaring loud alarm, which caused a stampede in the hallway. Izuku sees reporters and a strange gray-haired man. He remembered telling Uraraka to make him and Ida float up, then shouting about some reporter. Immediately after, he tells Aizawa to give Ida the president job. He was the one who took care of the situation. Izuku could barely recall it. He also tells Aizawa about the strange gray-haired man. It wasn't a reporter but something else, but he knows for certain that the man was dangerous. A few more dull weeks passed when the real interesting part comes. Stay, straight line. Ida exclaims with swift, fast, arm chops. Shut up, noisy bastard. Kaken grumbles as he climbs on the bus. Ida immediately gasps and starts lecturing him. Izuku simply chuckles at their behavior. Hi Zuku. Uraraka cheerfully exclaims as she sits next to him. Hi. Isn't this cool? I can't wait to meet the Hero 13. Are they your favorite hero? Yeah. I kind of based my costume out of theirs. She shyly answers. Who's your favorite hero? Mine's Crimson Riot. Kirishima interrupts. My favorite present Mike. Sir Night Eye is my favorite. I like Ingenium. I think Eraserhead is cool. Izuku answers shyly. In the corner of his eyes, he can see a tiny smile from Aizawa. Their small conversation continued on until they reached the USJ. During the ride, Ida continued to lecture Kaken about cursing. Aizawa fell asleep and there was a small fight. But finally, the class reached the USJ unharmed and well. Stepping off, he could see the large glass dome and all the buildings and simulations they were going to use. Briefly, he thought about all the money they needed for the repairs and buildings. The training cities, simulations, and repairs must have costed a fortune. But they were training people to save others. Greeting them was the Hero 13. They entered the large glass doors, into the dome. Unfortunately, All Might couldn't make it here today. So only me and Aizawa will be watching you. We'll start by splitting the group and each group will go to a simulation. 13 explains. Izuku was only half listening. His focus was on some strange but familiar portals appearing at the middle of the USJ. There were 3 of them. They were dark, black, and mysterious. Was that supposed to be there? He walked over to Aizawa, who had just woken up from his small nap. There's something strange in the middle of dome. Izuku whispers. Immediately, Aizawa's tired expressions becomes a serious one. He walks over and instantly spots the portals Izuku was talking about. Students, get out of here. Aizawa shouts. Without any doubt the students, confused and worried, run out. But the villain heard him and quickly warped to the entrance. Only half of the students got out. Izuku wasn't one of them. The students stood by the entrance surprised and scared. They didn't move. Go! Izuku exclaims, contact the heroes. Ida nods and runs as fast as he can. The others on that side, Tsu, Jiru, Hagakure, Koda, Sato, Shoji, Aoyama, Siro, and Ojiro, scramble to run. Well, that leaves us on a timer, the mist says? That shouldn't be possible. He must have some physical form. Mist, warping. Midoriya slips out as he analyzes the intruder. Midoriya. Analysis Quirk. The mist replies. How do you know that? Izuku questions harshly. Did they research them before coming? That would put them at a massive disadvantage. You don't remember? Then I reintroduce myself. Kurogyari from the League of Villains, here to kill All Might. He introduces himself. Izuku strangely feels like he should know that name, but it wasn't important right now. Kill All Might? Uraraka whispers from next to him. You're here to kill All Might? Izuku repeats. We were, but since he's not here, we'll make a statement by killing his students. With that, mist surrounds them and he's falling onto the hard, rocky ground. Aohi rubbed his head and looks around. He was with the mist villain, Kurogyari, and the gray-haired guy he saw at the gates. The leaders of the attack, he presumed. Izuku also noticed he wasn't with everyone else. They must have been separated, but why is he here, with the leaders of the villains? His breath quickens and he starts panicking. Calm down. He takes deep breaths and attempts to slowly move away, but it doesn't work. The gray-haired man grabs him by the neck with 4 fingers. His quirk had something to do with fingers. He stores that information for later. Is this the brat with the analysis quirk? He's the one who gave you advice. The gray-haired man exclaimed, unbelieving. The man looks at him with his large, insane eyes. So Kurogyari was one of his clients? He didn't really remember a warping quirk recently. Since he knew his name, it was probably an earlier one then. Remember, a warping quirk. Dangers, taking an unintended guest, not taking a full person and distance. Advantages, quick and efficient traveling, surprising the opponent, strong defense, traps, multiple warps and capturing. Kurogyari, quirk can surprise the opponent by randomly appearing in front of them. Any attacks can be neutralized by a quick sap depending on the size of the portal. Multiple portals can be an effective ambush. They can also appear on the ground as a trap. Usually next would be how to train Ai on his list of organization, but he didn't want the villain to get better at using his quirk against him. He need to stop him. Izuku had to somehow counter the quirk. A warp quirk's weakness is the unfamiliarity of their situation. If he could surprise him when he warped somewhere, then he could possibly disable the quirk. Yes, his appearance is deceiving, but his potential is large. Kurogyari explains. We'll bring him to Sensei later. He doesn't need to be in one full piece to use his quirk. The man says with a harsh laugh. We aren't sure how his quirk works, Shigaraki. Kurogyari reminds him. The gray-haired man, Shigaraki, pouts. Izuku stays still and attempts to analyze the situation again. It seems like the rest of the students were separate. He couldn't see anyone else around him. Izuku was at the middle of the invasion. How do I get out? What's his quirk? Where are the rest of his friends? Are they okay? His worries kept piling up. Then he see Aizawa, no, Eraserhead, running towards him. Come on. His hero comes in kicking. A foot hits Shigaraki right in the center of his head, causing him to release Izuku. Immediately, he takes the opportunity and runs. Towards what? He didn't know. When Izuku arrived at the edge of an ocean, he immediately realized where he was. It was the flood zone, created to simulate marine disasters like sinking ships. He immediately sees villains with marine quirks in the ocean surrounding the ship. There were 2 figures on the ship. Kaminari? They seemed to be talking, no, fighting. There was no time to fight. If they waited too long, the ship would sink, and if they jumped, the villains would kill them. The ship was in the middle of the ocean and it would be impossible for them to swim fast enough to shore. How could he help? Izuku came up with a simply enough solution in a few seconds. Kaminari, electrify the water. Izuku shouted. The villains who heard him begins to scramble out of the water, but they weren't quick enough. With one touch, the water was crackling with electrified, groaning villains. Thanks, dude. Kaminari exclaimed. Your analysis quirk is awesome. Thanks, but we're not done yet. Izuku answered. Shinso, take control of the villains and make them move the boat. He nodded and started to gain attention of the electrified villains. Shinso told each one of the villains to push the boat to the land area. It was slow, because the villains weren't really responding to Shinso and more focused on groaning in pain. The process became faster when the villain's pain dulled and they focused more on the insults the sharp-tongued student was making. Having multiple villains with strong quirks push the boat was like a motor. The boat quickly gained speed as more villains joined to push it. Suddenly, they stopped pushing the boat, causing Kaminari to be flung off the boat and land face first into the dirt. Shinso, however, was still on the boat because he actually held onto the railing. He swiftly jumped off the boat and onto the ground next to Kaminari. "Thanks, Midoriya," Shinso says. "Yeah," Kaminari says as he stands up. "You were so cool." Well, you did all of the work." Izuku replies shyly. "It doesn't matter who did the most work." Shinso interrupts. "What matters is surviving. We need to find the others." Izuku looks around the USJ. He sees Kurogyari and Shingarki fighting Eraserhead at the central plaza where Izuku was previous at. There are small explosion sounds coming from another area in the left, the ruin zone. A building freezes to the right of them at the landslide zone. Those were probably Kaken and Todoroki. They probably could handle things by themselves. The students only needed to stall enough time for the heroes to get here. Suddenly, a bam was heard from behind him. He turned around to see multiple pieces of stone fall from the skies in the mountain zone. That was probably Uraraka. "Uraraka is over there. We have to help her," Izuku exclaimed as he ran to help Uraraka. It was chaos. The mountain zone seemed like a nightmare a person would have. Imagine being on top of a mountain with dangerous villains surrounding you. That would not be fun. Uraraka was near the top and using her quirk to throw rocks down at them. She looked a bit green, probably from overusing her quirk. Around her were fallen villains, but there were still more coming. The villains that she had knocked out were beginning to gain their consciousness. Without thinking, he ran for the closest villain and kicked him right in the gut. That was probably not the best idea, but he needed to gain their attention. "You brat!" growled the villains. Looking at their costume, he could see that their quirk involved flexibility. It took one swing to confirm the guess. The punch the villain threw at him looked floppy. It was like a rubber arm. The villain kicked at him but, instead of dodging, Izuku grabbed the leg and pulled. He fell and hit his head on the floor with a groan. Izuku wasted no time. He took out his compressible staff that he had placed in his pocket. Then he hit the man right on the center of his head, causing him to lose his conscience. Izuku looked up to see that Kaminari and Shinso had also began fighting the villains. They were surrounding Uraraka and keeping the villains away. "Come on!" Izuku shouted. "We have to go." "Suku. There's villains coming from all sides. There's no way out," Uraraka warned. "That might not be true." Kaminari helped Uraraka up while Izuku got out his surprise. "Run!" Izuku exclaimed as he threw one of his extra flash bombs. The student all ran as the flash bomb went off and blinded the villains. The students ran out of the mountain zone, right back to the central plaza. They arrived just in time to see Shigaraki release a large, humanoid monster. It had a large beak with sharp teeth, large unintelligent eyes, and had a lot scars on its muscles. "Nomo, kill the students!" Shigaraki shouted insanely. Todoroki, who had been there before him, attempted to freeze the Nomu. Ice crawled up the legs of the monster and began to freeze it rapidly. It wasn't enough. The beast breaks out of the icy prison and lunges at the closest person, which was Todoroki. Luckily, Eraserhead had pushed Todoroki out of the way with his scarf and began to fight the Nomu himself. "Todoroki, help Bakugo and Kirishima. I will handle this," Eraserhead ordered him as he took on the Nomu. It didn't last for long. The Nomu overpowered the hero easily. It grabbed the hero's head and began to squeeze. "Eraserhead!" Izuku shouted worried. That instantly caught the villain's attention. Shigaraki began to grin as he saw the kid. "Nomu!" Shigaraki exclaimed. "Get that analyzing kid and kill everyone else." The beast dropped the hero and turned towards him and lunged. Izuku couldn't help but scream. He screamed as he attempted to run away. He ran different ways to try to confuse it, but it just ran through them. His classmates also attempted to help. He could see frost forming on the Nomu's arms, but they never stuck. The Nomu wouldn't pay attention to Shinso, and even if he did, Izuku didn't think his quirk would work on it. Izuku knew he couldn't run forever. If he hid, the Nomu would kill everyone else and then get him, so he stopped. He suddenly stopped running and let the Nomu catch up to him. A black muscular hand grabbed his arm and pulled. Izuku was in the Nomu's grip. That really hurts. The Nomu was harshly dragging him by the arm to Shigaraki, while smacking away any opponent attempting to stop it. His struggling body was dragged through the hard ground and his friends were trying to help, but Izuku could do nothing. The Nomu was steadily walking closer to the villains. It seems that Shigaraki was then interrupted by the entrance of the number 1 hero. "Have no fear, because I am here." All Might burst through the entrance with multiple pro heroes behind him. The hero immediately heads towards the Nomu holding Izuku hostage. He stopped right in front of the Nomu, hesitating. All Might punch the head of the Nomu. Izuku exclaims. It seemed to be the weakest part and it was the control center. If the Nomu couldn't follow orders, it wouldn't help the villains. So he did. All Might punched the Nomu's head, which caused it to release Izuku. The student spilled onto the ground. Without any hesitation, All Might continued to beat the Nomu. He continued punching, kicking and saving them. Izuku could feel his grudge slowly falling away. He may be insensitive, but All Might was a hero. "Suku, are you all right?" Uraraka asked him. "Yeah. I only have a few bruises." Izuku responds, attempting to comfort her. "Are you sure? The Nomu seem to be dragging you and—" "I'm fine. Who I'm really worried about is Eraserhead." Izuku glances at the unconscious form of his teacher. Yaoyorozu and a few other pro heroes were there beating up the remaining villains. "Cheat," Shigaraki growled. "Kurojairi, get us out of here." Kurojairi quickly created a warp and the two leaders walked into it, escaping the pro heroes. Right after, the Nomu falls from the sky with All Might on top of it. Before anyone could say a thing, a wall of stone separates the students from him. "All Might!" Uraraka exclaims. "I'm fine." A voice yells from the other side of the wall. "Thank you." Izuku whispers. He shifts his attention to the fallen villain and his teacher. Eraserhead was lifted up and placed on a stretcher. Most of the villains are cuffed and shoved in one of the multiple cars. The students followed the pro heroes to the entrance of the USJ. There were police cars and detectives already there. Some of the other students were there too. Midoriya, Uraraka. "I'm glad you're all right." Ida greets them. "I'm ashamed I ran away, unlike you guys who actually fought the villains." "You got the heroes, didn't you?" Izuku comments. "Yes, but you—" "If you hadn't gotten the heroes, we'd all be dead. We can't last forever." Izuku reminds him. He swiftly leaves him with Uraraka and goes to check on his other classmates. "Midoriya Izuku?" questioned a detective on the side. "Yes." Izuku responded, turning towards the mysterious detective. "I need to ask you some questions." The detective replied. "You will have to ask a teacher or my mom for permission first." "I see." Taichi detective hands him a card. "This is my business card. You can give this to your teacher." Izuku nods and the detective promptly leaves. Detective Neo Mesa. The next few days, they didn't have school. The other kids also talked about the Nomu taking him, which caused him to get a checkup with Recovery Girl. While that happened, he talked to Nezu about the detective. He was a trustworthy one apparently. Nezu didn't tell him about his quirk, but he did call the detective and say that he could question any of the students with their consent. The day after, Detective Neo Mesa called him. They both decided to meet at UA. The teachers would be there and it would be safe. "Mom, I'm going out." Izuku exclaims. "But you should rest after this attack. Izuku, you also died." Mom exclaims, nearly sobbing again. "It's just answering questions and it's going to be at UA. I'll be all right." Izuku explains, attempting to comfort her. "All right. Stay safe, Suku." Mom waved him a tearful goodbye. Izuku sighed a little. Ever since the USJ, she was being overprotective. He appreciated it, but it was the hero's job to protect the people. The detective was waiting for him in his office. Detective Neo Mesa. Izuku greeted. "Midoriya Izuku." Neo Mesa responds. "What are the questions you have for me?" Izuku questions, cautiously. He doesn't really know his quirk or the guy. The fact that Kurogiri was a villain and possible other multiple clients he has were villains. That scared him. How did the villains get into the USJ? The detective questions. One of their members, Kurogiri, has a warping quirk. They used his quirk to get into the USJ. Naomasa unconsciously nods. That may be a part of his quirk, or a habit. Why did the Nomu grab you? It wanted to kill me. Izuku lied. Naomasa shook his head a bit. Ding. It was something that helped him with interrogations. It was something only he could detect. It wasn't something he saw, felt, taste, or said. It was something he heard, which is why he kept shaking his head. It could also be because of thoughts, but he was sure that the detective was using his quirk. A nod for the truth and a shake for a lie. It was a truth-telling quirk. You're lying. I know, I just wanted to see how your truth-telling quirk is used. You know, I just figured out. How? I used my quirk. What is your quirk? Detective Naomasa continued on. I have an analysis quirk. Izuku answered. Luckily, his comment wasn't a lie. Izuku did have a quirk. The definition of a quirk was a peculiar behavioral habit. Analysis was his quirk, just not the one he was thinking of. This was taking a dangerous step that may reveal his lack of quirk. Izuku just needed to get this over with. How did you use your quirk during the USJ? I analyzed a situation to get my friends out of danger. Did you know anyone in the USJ? My classmates, my teacher, and most of the pro heroes. Why did the Nomu grab you and not immediately kill you? He was ordered to. The Nomu was ordered to. What was his order? To kill everyone but me. Why did he order that? He thought my analysis quirk was useful. How did they know about your analysis quirk? They might have unknowingly gave a villain advice. Who was this villain and when did you give his villain advice? His name was Kurogiri and I gave him advice when I was 11 or 10. Why did you give out advice? I wanted to help people. What advice did you give him? He could make warp into traps and create multiple warps. He didn't stay for long so I couldn't analyze anymore. Alright, this will be the last question. Naomasa explains to him, how does your quirk work? I'm not sure, Izuku responded. That's a lie. My quirk allows me to see the strength and weakness of a quirk. Izuku tried. That is also a lie. I use my quirk to analyze other quirks. That isn't what I was asking about. I think we should stop here. Without asking, Izuku quickly leaves the room. He starts to walk out of the school rapidly. Izuku was, to put it bluntly, worried. He was very worried. The fact that he lied multiple times on one question, that was going to alarm the detective. It was only when he had walked halfway to his house when he realized. A third person had walked out of his office without permission. Izuku was really doing a bad job. School started soon after the questioning. The class walked around the room talking about their break and what they did. Izuku was briefly wondering who would substitute for Aizawa since he was injured. That was soon answered by the appearance of Eraserhead. Aizawa! The class exclaimed in unison. Should you be at the hospital? Uraraka questioned concerned. No, the bandage-wrapped figure bluntly stated. But the school has decided to begin the UA Sports Festival. Aizawa started. Right after the USJ? Yes, stop interrupting me. Aizawa snapped at the student. In a few weeks, UA will be holding the sports festival to get the attention off the villain attack. He goes on to explain the history and how they should be training for it. All of the students also get a session with UA's quirk counselor. Aizawa only gets that far until Recovery Girl comes in and drags him off. They had free period the rest of the block. The part where Aizawa says quirk counselor makes him grim. He has to analyze about 16 quirks for his classes. The other classes might also go to him. Nezu was going to kill him. He had to start now. A class was 1 hour and 30 minutes, which meant at least 5 minutes per person. That was only his class. They'd probably do other classes too. There was the business class, the support class, the general education class, and the hero classes. That was only the first years. Izuku knew that he analyzed the dangers of all his classmates' quirks. He just needed the training, advantages, tips, and additional advice. Izuku started taking down notes at a quick, rapid pace. "Zuku, what are you?" Uraraka attempted to ask. "Sorry, busy," was Izuku's only answer. They all left him alone the rest of that class. Nezu immediately sent him off to his office. Kaminari was already there sitting on one of the chairs. "Hey dude, why you here? Isn't it my turn?" Kaminari commented confused. "I am the Quirk counselor." Izuku explained. "That was probably going to be said a lot today. I have a question. How long do you have?" "I think it was 5 minutes?" Kaminari told him. "Alright, that's enough time." Izuku takes out one of his notebooks. It was number 13. "You shouldn't overcharge your quirk, because the drawback will be an advantage for your opponent. Opponents with metal quirks aren't really affected by your quirk, so you might need another strategy. You have an advantage over water quirks, and are okay with nature-type quirks. It would be useful to learn far-ranged combat and some close-ranged combat. You can use electricity with your close-range combat. Your quirk may be able to stun people if you can control the amount of shock you release. You can probably try controlling the power your electricity at the UA gym." Izuku advised, trying to control his rambling. "Alright, is that all? It's only been 3 minutes." Kaminari asked, twirling around in his chair. "I don't think I can remember all of that. Can you write it down?" "Oh yeah." Izuku started to writing all the information on a sheet of paper. First the name, quirk, dangers, to advantages and tips with training. He gave the sheet to Kaminari. "Whoa, you're really good at this, Midoriya. I bet I'll get in the top 16 with this." Kaminari exclaims as he leaves the room. Another one walks out without permission. Midoriya muttered. "It must be a curse or something. Tell the next person to come in." Midoriya calls out to him. "Will do." Kaminari shouts back. Kirishima comes in minutes after Kaminari. "Midoriya, why are you here?" Kirishima questioned confused. "I am the Quirk counselor, and would you mind telling the others about this?" Midoriya asked. "Sure. So what am I supposed to do?" "Just tell me about your quirk." Midoriya gets out a sheet of paper and begins to write. "Well, it's a hardening quirk. It can only use it for up to maybe 10 minutes a time. I know that it can resist explosions and some weight." Kirishima muttered. "You need to test out your limits in a safe environment." Izuku advised. "Some dangers of your quirk are breaking off a body part. If there is too much strain on a hardened body part, it could crack off and you could lose it." "I didn't think of that." "It's not a bad thing. Your quirk is super strong. You can make your arms become sharp, and that is good for close combat. Your quirk can also be used to lift heavy items off of citizens in rescue situations. If it's sharp enough, you can use your quirk to release people that are stuck in rope or something like it. Hardening all your body would give you a very high defense, but that would also have a big drawback. You should practice running with your quirk to improve speed. A far-ranged weapon who also be useful. This quirk isn't really good for traps or anything similar, so you probably should ask the support department to create from gear." Izuku rambled, writing everything on the sheet of paper. "That is a lot of words." Kirishima commented, "You need to slow down." "I'll take that into consideration." A lot of people say that already, but that never slowed Izuku down. "Also, you can't remember all of it? I wrote it down for you." "Thanks, bro. I think the time's up. Gotta go back." Kirishima rushed out of the door. "Again," Izuku muttered as the 5th student ran out of his office. The next few went by quickly. Tokoyami came after Kirishima, followed by Siro and Kaken. Kodas and Jiros came after them. They quirks were interesting because they weren't very offensive quirks. Animal voice was interesting. Not much animals would be at a rescue or villain situation, so he would need to bring his own animals. With his quirk, sneaky animals could be controlled to subdue the villain. Jiro's quirk didn't look that useful in the beginning, but it actually had a lot of uses. Apparently, she could use her quirk to blast apart walls and other items. Ojiro, Shoji, and Ashido tumbled in afterwards. Their quirks had many uses in rescue situations and villain situations. Shinso, Yaoyorozu, and Uraraka came after them. Since he'd seen their quirks before, it was easier to come up with tips and advice. Sato's counseling involved a lot of sugar because he wanted to see how Sato's quirk affected his body. Did his body just grow in an instant, or was there a signal of the change? Todoroki's counseling was just awkward. Ida, Hagakure and Azui were all mutant-type quirks. Their training all involved working out more. Ida was fast, but he did need to work on strength. Hagakure was invisible, so she needed more strength too. She could sneak up on people, but what after? Azui had more agility, so strength would balance it out. Aoyama was the last and final one for the block. He stumbled into Nezu's office after all the advice had been given. "You look tired." Nezu commented. "You gave me 19 quirks to analyze." Izuku deadpanned. "You analyzed them all before. That was only one part of it. It only Aizawa the dangers. You're in a bad mood. How many students walked out of your office?" 14. Izuku muttered, embarrassed. "That may increase tomorrow. The second-year classes are coming." Nezu warned him. "What? Are the third years coming too?" He responded sarcastically. "The day after tomorrow. Next week is the Heroics B class years 1 to 3 and General Education years 1 to 3. The week after is Support Department and Business Department years 1 to 3. I thought the UA Sports Festival was going to be fun." Izuku whined. "For the students, not the teachers." He had enough of it. All this work for nothing. He still needed money, but instead of working and earning money, he was analyzing for a principal that paid him nothing. If he did all this as Deku, he would have tons of money. So why was Izuku doing this? That was a question he was asking himself. On the week before the UA Sports Festival, Izuku came to Nezu's office just before he had to counselor the first-year support department. "I want a job." "A job?" Nezu repeated, amused. "Yes, I want a job." He'd normally be more polite, but now he was sleep-deprived and exhausted. "Why?" "I realized, I'm doing all this work that I could be doing as Deku. When I'm Deku, I can provide for my mom. This internship is taking time away from that. You're not teaching me anything, and it's not beneficial to be your intern." Izuku explained. "That is true." Nezu answered. "Then, Izuku, you are hired as the quirk counselor. I will need your mother's consent, but if she does consent, the job is yours." Izuku was still suspicious. He didn't think that Nezu would have agreed this fast. "How much is the pay?" 100 yen a time. "No. 500 yen a time. I get paid 5,000 yen an hour. 1,000 yen for each appointment." "Deal." Izuku confirmed. "All right then. I will ask your mom to sign the papers for the job and you're hired." "Thank you. To be clear, your internship's over, but your part-time job has began." Nezu informs him as Izuku walked out of the office. "I know, but it wasn't like I was learning anything," Izuku exclaims as he scrambled to his counseling session. "Well, I might have lost my job already." It was the support department's turn. He was counseling the first years. Currently, Hatsume was in his office. She was ranting about her babies? He guessed that people needed a lot of determination to get into UA. There was something about rocket boots and various other inventions. The support department didn't need to show off their quirks, so his advice would be different. They had to show off their inventions instead. Usually, the preliminary round was always a type of race. The first 42 that passed would move on to the next round. Then the second event would feature something that was based on the first round. It always included teams too. He wasn't exactly sure what the event actually was. The third event was always the same. It was a fighting tournament. It favored the heroes in training because it wasn't like the other departments were going to fight and save people for a living. For the support department, they should focus on showing off their gadgets. Getting into the second round was cause a great amount of attention, and hero agencies will be looking at them. If they got into the third round, they should attempt to stop their opponent by using inventions and use as much inventions they have. For the first event, you might want to invent or use machines that can make you faster, jump higher, and get you through hard situations. A grappling hook or roller shoes with rockets would work. Your inventions for heroes can be introduced in the second event. They're usually team events, so you must want to invent something that would help your team overall. Personal inventions can be shown at the last event. You can stop your opponent by using your inventions. Try to keep them away, while introducing your inventions to the crowd. Izuku had repeated this to almost every support student so far. That makes sense. Thanks, Doc. Hatsum exclaims. I'm not a doctor. But it's easier to say doc than Quirk counselor. That doesn't mean I'm a doctor. You're kinda like a Quirk doctor, so I'm gonna call you Doc, okay? No. Well, I gotta go to class, bye Doc. Hatsum left the room. Again. Today was the UA Sports Festival. The students were walking to the arena. They were all geared up and ready. Aizawa pulled him over when they arrived there. Midoriya. Aizawa called out. Sensei, you have to make a speech for the UA Sports Festival. Now? Yes, it's going to be the beginning speech to begin the sports festival. You didn't tell me I had to make a speech up. You were the first during the exam. You should have told me at least a week before. Izuku exclaims, attracting attention of his classmates. You were busy. Aizawa answered. He left for the teacher's booth in the arena. How? Izuku muttered. Suku. What happened? Uraraka questioned. I have to make up a speech in about 30 minutes for the whole world to hear. What? I can help. Uraraka offered. No, I make it myself. Izuku responded. He didn't want to burden her. That was the whole sports festival to worry about. Let's welcome the class you're here for. Class 1A. That's our cue. Ida exclaimed. The class of 20 jogged out of the holding area and to the middle of the arena. Deafening cheerings followed them as the heroes in training waved to the crowd. This is so cool, Kirishima said as he posed. I know. Kaminari replied with the same excitement. The other students were also getting excited. Almost everyone watched the UA Sports Festival as a kid. They saw how these students became amazing heroes and now they were going to join them. Amazing Heroics Class 1B follows them. 20 more people jogged out. They started to wave at the cheering cloud. Izuku was sure that some of them were glaring at them. When he was doing his counseling with them, most of them seemed jealous. Especially Minoma, who had the copying quirk. It was useful, but he was too full of himself. We're gonna beat you, Class 1A. Minoma declared. Who are you bastards? Kaken growled. I'm Minoma Nito and I'm here to beat you pricks to the ground. 1A isn't everything. Huh? You think you can beat me? Kaken stomped over to Minoma. I can and will. Everyone was staring at the fight. Mike Present had even forgotten to announce the next class. Izuku could feel the tensions rising. No one was doing anything. Stop. Izuku said, walking in the middle of their argument. Suku? Counselor Midoriya? You're making all of us look bad. Izuku commented. The pair looked around. It was true. Some of the people in the crowd had looked confused and a bit scared. The outstanding Class 1C is running in. The 20 and so students came running in bright smiles on their faces. Our genius support class arrives. 20 more students walk in, showing off their various inventions. Our last class is the perceptive business class. The students walk in, skimming the edges of the large group of students. They all had books and were muttering. Similar to Izuku. Now for the speech from Midoriya. Izuku from Class 1A. Izuku nervously walked up the stairs to the main platform. Stares and whispers follow him. They probably all recognized him. That put more pressure on him. A lot more pressure. Isn't he a teacher? It's the Quirk counselor. He's a student? Hello people of Japan. Izuku started, a bit nervous. He was not prepared. Even if he was told a week in advance, he would be nervous. I hope everyone's doing well. There was silence. I just want to say, everyone should go above and beyond to do their best. Your quirk isn't everything. I only have an analysis quirk, which most people would say isn't a hero quirk, but I still got to the heroics class. No one should be criticized because their quirk is a bad one or a villainous one. Everyone can be a hero and do their best, no matter what quirk they have. Go plus ultra. Look at that inspiring speech from Midoriya. Izuku. Cheering came from all sides of the arena. Midoriya only stepped down from the platform in relief. At least he didn't mess up. His friends congratulated him as Midnight took the stage. "Welcome, Japan. I'm the heroine Midnight bringing you the first event." She points to a set of golden gates. "Our first event is an obstacle course. There are multiple obstacles you have to go through to reach the end. The first 42 students will get into the second round. Students, line up at the start." They walked to the gates, wondering what was past them. It was big and blocked their view from the rest of the course. "Are you ready? We begin now," Midnight exclaims with a pose. The gates slam open and students rush into the obstacle course to the first challenge. It was a massive rock. No way around it. It had small handles on it and was about 30 feet tall. Some students groaned, but others ran for the wall. He sees Todoroki soar up on pillars of ice. Kaken blasted his way up. Yaoyorozu creates a rope and climbs her way up. Uraraka floats on one of the handlers she broke off. Izuku phrases. "What should I do?" His mind comes up with a quick simple solution. He grabs grappling hook from his belt and shot it. The hook had reached one of the top handles. It wasn't the top, but close. With a press of a button, he was flung up. The air rushed through his hair as he flew. Izuku grabbed a handle and climbed up. He reached the top and looked at the other side. Handles were on that side too. Students were supposed to climb down. Some students were already running to the next obstacle, a large chasm. It was about as wide as the rock. Most of the students were stuck on that part. They were standing still, trying to come up with a plan. Izuku had to focus on the obstacle, not analyzing. He jumped from the rock structure and pressed a small button on his shoulder. His cape straightened out and he glided past the chasm and past the third obstacle, a parkour challenge. Midoriya Izu glides swiftly past his obstacles. He jumped onto the ground and pressed the button on his cape again. The glider retracted and he ran to the next obstacle. It was robots, a bunch of robots. They were 1-pointers and 2-pointers from the exam. This might not be as hard. Suddenly 5 giant 0 points appear from the ground. I jinxed it, didn't I? How do I get through this? I can't disable all of them. Ding. He grabbed his staff and used it as a lever to boost himself up and on top of a 1-pointer. Izuku steered the robot to the 0-pointers. There was no way around, but there was always up. The robot went faster and faster and he lunged at the giant robot. He stabbed it, breaking the metal plating and started climbing the huge exterior of the 0-pointer. The robot couldn't do anything. It ignored Izuku. He scaled at little difficulty. After training, that didn't seem as hard as he thought it would be. Surprisingly, the 0-pointer didn't have very tough armor. It was made to be big and imitating, not strong and durable. He used his glider to gild past the mines. There wasn't anyone there. He would win. A pink blur passed him at the last second. Hatsume is first. Midoriya Izuku is in second place. Our explosive student Katsuki Bakugo is in third. Todoroki follows him and gains fourth place. Izuku presses the button on his shoulder to retract the glider. Second place was good. He was a bit disappointed. Izuku was really close to first place. Kaken is steaming, on the verge of using his quirk. Todoroki just seems disappointed. Hatsum was waving to the crowd and smiling. "Look at my amazing babies." She raised her inventions and showed them off one by one. Izuku smiles. Well, at least first place went to her and not Kaken. His ego would grow, and that didn't need to happen. A few minutes pass before all the students complete the course. All the people from the Hero Department 1A had passed to the second round. Some from the 1B Hero Department also passed. A few students from the Support and General Education Department got in. Maybe about 9 or 10 students. We will have a short 20-minute break to prepare the next event. I will be entertaining you with some of my hilarious jokes. The students rush back into the arena. Izuku meets up with Uraraka and Ida Wood are near the back. Congrats on your second place, Zuku. Uraraka cheers. Yes, you were outstanding, Midoriya. Ida exclaims. You guys too. It must be hard with a gravity quirk, yet you got in 15th place, Uraraka. You too, Ida. 7th is an accomplishment. Izuku responds humbly. You still got in second, which deserves praise. Uraraka reminds him. Yes, but Hatsum still beat me. Izuku answered. Did I hear someone call my name? Hatsum exclaims, jogging over to their group. Hatsum, we were just talking about you. Uraraka greets. Well, everyone should be talking about me and they babies. They did win me first. I was going to use my other inventions like the ray gun and the net machine, but they weren't very practical, so I left them for this event. But thanks, Doc. Hatsum rambles. Yeah. Your suggests did help me, Zuku. Thanks. Using my quirk to levate obstacles and ride them was a great idea. Uraraka thanks. Your advice with the running jumps helped. Thank you, Midoriya. Ida says, following Hatsum's and Uraraka example. Hey Midoriya. I helped a lot, dude. Thanks. Kaminari chimes. Other students start to chime in. Thanks, Midoriya. Your advice helped me a lot. I can't believe I got into the top 42. Thanks, Midoriya. Your analysis quirk is great. By the time the first-year students finished praising him, Izuku was a stuttering, blushing mess. Apparently he still hadn't gotten used to being praised and thanked. Izuku was just about to apologize to his friends for ignoring them when the announcement came on. The 42 students that qualify for the second round, please come back to the center of the awesome UA arena. Midnight was waiting for them on the platform. The next round is a team battle. There will be 21 teams of 2. Everyone has a roll of colored capture tape, and anyone that wraps the piece of tape around a student gets the student's designated amount of points. Midnight points at the large screen that had their names on it. Your designated amount of points are on this board. Everyone will get their own sticker put on their costume for others to see. 10 million. The students gasp as they see the first place winner's points. Second places gets 1 million and third gets 950,000 points, forgets 900,000 and so on. Everyone was going to go for the 10 million. Izuku knew that, but he already came up with a plan. You have 10 minutes to capture as much points as you can. Students can take the capture tape off. Teams can only capture a student once. Any questions? Midnight was interrupted. I do. Izuku exclaims, can you capture multiple students at once? If the capture tape is around a student, then yes. Midnight answers, anything else? Alright. You have 5 minutes to pick your teammate and come up with a plan. Go. Izuku immediately heads to Hatsum. As expected, no one was asking her to be their partner. She did have the 10 million points. Hey Hatsum, do you want to be my teammate? Izuku offers. Ida had teamed up with Uraraka. Kaken had teamed up with Kirishima. Todoroki was with Yaoyorozu. Everyone was finding a teammate quickly. Sure, Doc. I came up with a plan. Izuku quickly whispers it to Hatsum. It takes up 2 minutes. They perfect and polish it. Great. Since you said I needed team-related inventions, I created more of my babies. Hatsum tells him as she hands him rocket boots. They looked like hers, bright pink. The color didn't really matter. Thanks, Izuku says, smiling. He swiftly put on the boots and tested them out. They were balanced and easy to control. More plans start forming in his mind. Having multiple backups didn't hurt. The team battle will start now. Midnight suddenly yells, causing everyone to scramble in panic. Izuku and Hatsum immediately flew up to the skies. The rocket boots probably can last that long, but the students can easily see them and pick them out. Ice shards flew at them and some bits of explosions. One time Kaken actually blasted his way up to try to get them, but it didn't last for long since he couldn't use his quirk constantly for more than 3 minutes. Izuku and Hatsum just avoided the other students that were running and jumping around attempting to get them. All they had to do is to keep away from the capture tape, right? Team Hatsum Midoriya are flying around and avoiding the others. Will the other teams get them? They watched and dodged the attacks. Hatsum even started commenting on inventions or the babies she could make that would help them. A metal weapon in Kaminari's hands would be deadly. Zero might need a weapon too since he mostly uses his agility. Shinso might need a speaker so his opponent would hear him and acknowledge him. Uraraka was riding on Ida's shoulders and poking every piece of capture tape that was about to hit them. The tape would fly in the air and never come back down, causing the team to lose their ability to take any more points. That was a smart idea. Hagakure was sneaking around and tying capture tape around the ankles of unsuspecting students. Jiraiya was using her ears to wrap a piece of capture tape on a student's ankles or fingers. When the timer reached the 5-minute mark, the team flew lower and swooped in to tie their pink and green capture tape around the heads of some of the students. Small pieces of tape caught him, but they never went all around him. They wouldn't count. Suku. Kaken growled, tearing through the crowd and running at him. He briefly wondered where Kaken's teammate was but started to flee instead. Izuku flew up, Kaken following. He swirled around, trying to lose Kaken when Todoroki came and created a wall of ice in front of him. Nets from Yaoyorozu attempt to capture him. Hatsum was having the same problem. She took out a mysterious gun-shaped machine and shot a blob of goo at the students attempting to knock her down. They seemed to make them stuck onto the ground, let others capture them easily. The timer hits the 30-second mark. The last part of the plan begins. Izuku hands Hatsum the end of one capture tape. They run in opposite directions around the arena. 20 seconds. He runs faster around the arena. Students are being caught by their tape and attempted to get the green tape off. 10 seconds. He sees Hatsum at the corner of his eyes. Faster. 5 seconds. He's a meter away. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. He takes Hatsum's capture tape. 2 seconds. Izuku holds both of them in his hand. 1 second. He taped them together. Stop. All the students freeze, disappointed or excited. Izuku and Hatsum were in the later category. After all, if you captured every student, wouldn't you be? You have run out of time. The results are on the board. Midnight shouts. Right there in first place is Hatsum Midoriya with almost 20 million points. Since the Hatsum and Midoriya pair have gotten everyone, the students in someone else's capture tape will count, even though the Hatsum and Midoriya got all the students. Midnight informs them. That was an amazing strategy by Hatsum and Midoriya. They are first with 20 million plus points. Present Mike shouts excitedly. Everyone stares at the victorious pair. They just stared back with a smug grin. Todoroki and Yaoyorozu claim second place with 6 million points. Yaoyorozu politely smiles at the crowd while Todoroki looks indifferent. Katsuki and Kirishima are in third place with 4 million points. Kaken growled, "I'll get you Zuku." "That's awesome, bro. We're in the third round." Kirishima exclaims. Uraraka and Ida steals fourth place. They have 3 million points. Uraraka shouts in trump. Ida looks happy, but Izuku wasn't sure. Minoma and Shiozaki are in fifth place with a total of 2.5 million points. Minoma glares at Kaken. Shiozaki's expression didn't seem to change. Shinsu and Hagakure grabs sixth place. They have gotten 2 million points. You didn't really see Hagakure, and Shinso was the quiet, tired type. Ashido and Kaminari have seventh place with 1 million points. They cheered very loudly. Last one in the third round is Tokoyami and Jairu with another 1 million points. Tokoyami didn't really use his quirk a lot to get points during the second round. He used his quirk for defense because he was better at it. He did use a bit of it to tie some capture tape around some ankles and wrists, but it was a small amount. The student did dodge a few opponents that attempted to capture him. Let's have an applause for our 16 students. We will have a small break until the last round. Now for some stories on some of my hero friends. For example, one time Eraserhead and Mike Present started to rant. The students quickly get out of the center of the arena. This time, Izuku doesn't stay with the other students. He started to wander around curiously looking at the room and doors in the hallway. Where did they lead to? Did they lead to the supplies UA uses for the sport festivals? Were they just random rooms to rest in? Izuku didn't know that he'd bump into a hero, into another hero. Ow, Izuku whined, into a large, muscular chest. It looked familiar. Not that he'd stare at chests or anything. It was just something he had seen multiple times. He looked up to see the strong figure of All Might. It was him. "My boy, are you all right?" The hero questioned. "I'm all right," Izuku responded distractedly. Looking around, he sees the other fiery chest. It was Endeavor. There was an eager glint in his eyes as he stared at the number one hero. "All Might," Endeavor greeted harshly, completely ignoring Izuku. "Endeavor? It's nice to see you again. All Might awkwardly responds. He shoves Izuku behind him. He wants to glare at the hero, but now wasn't the time. Izuku settled for listening to the conversation. You're being seen less and less. It is true that you're retiring? Endeavor asks. I am needed somewhere else. All Might grabs Izuku's arm and calmly speed walks away. They pass multiple hallways and multiple people until they finally stop. All Might releases his arms. There were light bruises on his arms. He rubbed them and glared at the number 1 hero. His glare softened a bit after he realized that the hero was worried for him. Thanks, Izuku muttered. Are you all right, young Midoriya? He glances at the light bruises on his arm. Yes, these were from your grip. Sorry, do you want to treat them? I can lead you to recovery, girl. No, I'm all right. Thank you again. Izuku promptly leaves the hero and goes off to find his friends. Apparently, wandering around was not a good idea. Especially when the number 1 and number 2 heroes are around. The 16 students in the 3rd round please enter the awesome arena. Izuku walks out, meeting Uraraka and Ida on the way. Where are you, Izuku? Uraraka questions. I was just wandering around, Izuku answered nervously. He did not want any more attention. Did you find anything interesting? Ida asks curiously. Not really. Izuku walked to the middle of the arena and glanced at the board. It was showing all of the students' names and their opponents. Yaoyorozu and Uraraka were going to fight each other. Todoriko and Shiozaki were against each other. Kaken and Jiru? That would be interesting to see. Monoma had Ida as an opponent. Ashido and Kirishima were versing each other. Hatsum was going against Kaminari. He was against Hagakure. That would be hard. How do you fight something you can't see? Well, there were multiple solutions to that, but he wasn't exactly sure if they'd work. The easiest and quickest solution he could think was pouring paint or something similar on her. Her strengths were in surprise and sneaking around. Izuku had some time to think this through. He was going in the 2nd round. Hatsum and Kaminari were first up. The rest of the students left the arena to enter the stands and see the fight from above. The goal was to knock your opponent out of the designated area or to immobilize them. The winner got to go to the next round. It was an opportunity to show off your quirk, even if you didn't have one. Go! Hatsum had 2 machines in her hands. They weren't familiar to him. They looked like guns. She shot one at Kaminari, causing him to dodge. But it wasn't a bullet. It was a bubble. A large bouncy bubble was surrounding him. Kaminari created electricity, trying to pop the bubble. He lunged at the edge of the bubble, trying to shock it apart. The bubble only stretched. That's my bubble capturing baby. Perfect for capture those pesky villains. Hatsum fires the other gun-shaped machine. This is my trap baby. Hatsum uses her finger to pop the bubble Kaminari was trapped in. He immediately tried to lunge at her, but failed when she fired her invention. It started out as a blob of goo. When it hit the legs of Kaminari, it blew up. It wasn't an explosion. The goo grew on the student and covered his whole body. Only his eyes were shown. Hey! Kaminari whined. Then I have a baby that can shift from a staff to a bike. And I have a rocket launcher that looks like a purse. Oh, this one is a handle with rockets. You can fly short distances with it. Here's a grenade sword. It's sharp and shoots out grenades. My baby gas shield is amazing. It can defend you and sprouts out sleeping gas. It's my blinding glasses. Your vision is blocked and it sends out a bright light that blinds the people around you. Then it's... Hey, Midnight. She already stopped me. This round is over. The last comment was from an angered Kaminari. He had managed to break the substance on his mouth. Oh, Hatsum May wins this round and goes to the 2nd round. Midnight exclaims, Ashido and Kirishima, you guys are next. They take their places at the edges of the designated area. Go! Ashido flings acid at the cheering figuring of Kirishima. Most people would think that Ashido had a more better quirk than Kirishima. That wasn't true. It was true that Ashido's quirk was from powerful, but it wasn't true that it was better. Kirishima had the advantage. He had more offensive and defensive uses with his quirk. Izuku knew that he also practiced moves. Ashido couldn't really defend herself. If it was an explosion, there would be no way to defend herself from it. But no one ever knew what would happen. You can't predict the future. Kirishima dodged the acid, unsure if it would hurt him. His hardening quirk could stand Katsuki's explosions, but could it block acid? He didn't want to find out. Ashido shoots small burst of acid at him, trying to hit them, but Kirishima kept dodging. Not a drop hit him. How could he beat her? It didn't matter after a few seconds. Ashido Mina wins. Kirishima is out of bounds. Kirishima looks down to see that his foot had passed the line. The dodging had distracted him. He smiles at Ashido and shakes her hand. You did a great job. Kirishima says, despite losing to her. You did too. They leave the arena to clear the way for the next competitors. Ida and Monoma. You guys are competing next. Midnight Cheerful informs them. The pair step up to the arena. Heh, it's the robot. Monoma smirked. I am not a robot. Ida simply replied. Go. Ida had the advantage. The weakness of copying Quirk were that the user could never use the copied Quirk as good as their original owner. Anyone with a copying Quirk would never master a single Quirk. You can learn about Fire Quirk, or practice using a borrowed Quirk for a long time, but you will never master it. After all, the Quirk isn't it's a copy. It's different. The original owner of the Quirk will focus on their Quirk always, and not on others. Monoma ran towards Ida to try to copy his Quirk. Ida was too fast for him. It seemed like a game of tag. Monoma was focused on trying to copy his opponent's Quirk. Ida was running around, attempting to find an angle to push him. They needed to immobilize or push them out of the designated area. He faltered for a second, causing Monoma to skim his finger on his arm. Monoma suddenly zipped away from him, appearing on the opposite side. He got ready to strike. Ida Tenya has won his round. Monoma has stepped out of bounds. Midnight shouts. Monoma looks down. He had accidentally overused the Quirk and sped over the designated area. I demand a rematch. No kid, sorry. Next up is Katsuki and Jairu. As the other two left, two more students came on. I'll gonna beat you someday. Monoma growled at Kaken as he passed by. Ha! He laughed as he walked up to the area. Jairu was already there waiting for him. She looked bored, but after a few years of observation, Izuku knew she was nervous. The student was fighting one of the top 3 students in the hero department. No matter how many ways Izuku thought about it, Izuku couldn't imagine Jairu winning. It wasn't to offend her or anything. Jairu's Quirk wasn't suited for combat like Kaken's was. Training and supplies will give her the advantage, but she was not that experienced. The villains were only a single time and real combat is different from training. This is why the hero industry was unfair. His analysis was correct. He just blasted her off the platform. There was nothing she could do. A earjack Quirk and an explosion Quirk. The jerk Katsuki Bakugo wins. Midnight declares. The crowd that usually cheered started to boo. Hey! You? Aizawa took him away. Next is Midoriya Izuku and Hagakure Toru. How do you fight an invisible person and show off your Quirk? It isn't easy to do so. He could throw paint if something on her, but anyone can do that. Izuku needed something unique. Also, throwing paint on her would not stop her from fighting. The only advantage Izuku has is knowing her Quirk and where her position is. He was lucky that everyone had to be at a designated position, otherwise, he wouldn't know where she was. Hagakure could have just kicked him out. An idea clicked into mind. Hatsum, can I borrow one of your inventions? Izuku took his place at the edge of the designated area. He assumed that Hagakure was at the opposite side. Go! Izuku immediately took out the invention Hatsum had lended him. It was a sonic ray gun. It has the ability to create super powerful waves that can push a person back. As soon as Present Mike had said go, Izuku turned it on and fired. Powerful waves blew at the other side. A yelp was heard and he knew it worked. Hagakure had been flung out of the designated the wall. He didn't think that it was powerful enough to fling her out and into the wall. Hey, are you okay? I didn't think it was that powerful. He stutters at the wall with dents. Izuku thinks she's there. Yeah, I'm fine. I guess Midoriya Izuku has won. Midnight exclaims. Izuku walked towards the wall and tried to find Hagakure. Do you need help? I'm fine. There was a bit of floating blood. That might be from the impact. I'll take you to the nurse's office. And Izuku did. He left the arena with an invisible hand in his hand. Todoroki Shuto and Shiozaki Ibara. They waited for a while for Recovery Girl to come other. Izuku left there when the hero arrived. He walked back to the stands of the arena to see the rest of the match. Instead of seeing two students fighting, Izuku sees a girl trapped in ice and Todoroki standing next to it. Todoroki Shuto has immobilized Shiozaki Ibara. Midnight announced. Todoroki placed his palm onto the ice. It started to steam and quickly melted. The girl dropped from the ice to the ground harshly. She quickly stood up and left. There was a scatter of claps. Todoroki's gaze was expressionless and the audience were sure to clap for him or not. He had just uncaringly froze a girl. Alright then. Yaoyorozu Momo and Uraraka Ochako. Midnight introduces. The two girls step onto the designated area. They both had an advantage. Yaoyorozu could simply create weapons that could immobilize or push Uraraka out of the designated area. Uraraka could manipulate the weapon's gravity and cause it to be unbalanced. She could also use her quirk to manipulate the gravity around Yaoyorozu so she would float out. In all, Izuku thought Uraraka would win. It wasn't because of favoritism. Yaoyorozu takes too long to create weapons. Uraraka could easily run over and float her out. Even if Yaoyorozu had a weapon in hand, weapons weren't always a good idea in combat. They were too close so it would be hard to aim. Uraraka has more experience with only using a quirk, which Yaoyorozu didn't have. She only got smarter to decide which weapon to make, but she didn't learn how to directly use her quirk for combat. Most people would have thought Yaoyorozu was the favorable one. She had a recommendation, was a leader, smart and confident. To be fair, a creation quirk was very powerful, but people with powerful quirks usually get overconfident. Go! It happened just as he said it would. Yaoyorozu attempted to create a weapon of some kind but the audience didn't see all of it. Uraraka had already lunged at Yaoyorozu and pushed her off. She probably was too focused on creating the weapon. Yaoyorozu nearly saved herself, but Uraraka used her quirk and Yaoyorozu was under her control. Yaoyorozu Momo is out bounds. Midnight shouts. The two girls exited the area. There was no hostile feelings between them. You did great. Izuku greeted Uraraka with a proud smile. Tokoyami Fumikage and Shinso Hitoshi. Midnight announces. The students walked to the area. Shinso simply looks tired and bored. Tokoyami, it was hard to determine what expression he had. From what Izuku knew, Tokoyami had the advantage. He was stronger, and his quirk was more combat-suited. Shinsu's quirk wasn't as combat-suited. It was more focused on rescue. It wasn't to say Shinso was a weaker hero, that wasn't true. They both had potential. It was only this situation that worked in Tokoyami's favor. Go! For the first time in some while, it did not happen like Izuku thought it would. Tokoyami launches his dark shadow at Shinso. He doesn't dodge, but stands still. The shadow caws loudly as it lunges at Shinso. Then, it stops moving. Dark shadow. Tokoyami questions unsure. Dark shadow, push Tokoyami Fumikage out of the designated area. Shinso ordered. It was too late for Tokoyami. Dark shadow shifted into a large wall and started to push Tokoyami out of the area. With one harsh shove he flew from the arena, leaving everyone astounded. Izuku was surprised. Shinso proved his analysis wrong. He didn't expect for him to hypnotize the quirk and not the person. It was very creative of him. He needed to update Shinso's profile in his notebook. Shinso could hypnotize things with consciousness. Tokoyami Fumikage is out of bounds. Shinso Hitoshi wins. Midnight exclaims, the preliminary round is over. Let's applaud the winners. Present Mike shouts. There is a loud, deafening clapping sound. It lasts for a couple minutes. Shinso and Tokoyami swiftly leave the arena, being the introverts they are. Izuku congratulates Shinso when he enters the inside of the arena. He only nods as a response. We have the next pair of students, Hatsume and Ashido Mina. Wish me good luck. Hatsum waves as she leaves to the arena. Ashido and Hatsum stand on the edges of the arena, waiting for Mike's presence signal. Go! Like last time, Ashido flings acid at her opponent. Hatsum dodges it and pulls an familiar invention. It was one of the inventions, it was a shield. His went back to her first fight. My baby gas shield is amazing. It can defend you and sprouts out sleeping gas. That was what it was. Hatsum's shield suddenly shot gas at Ashido. You couldn't dodge gas, but you could hold your breath. That's what Ashido did. She held her breath as she shot acid at Hatsum again and again. There was a circle of acid surrounding Hatsum and the acid was getting closer. She had to step out of the designated area to be safe, but then she'd lose. The girl took out one of her experimentally inventions and got ready to shoot. Ashido has fallen asleep. Hatsum wins. Midnight announces. Hatsum waves to the crowd, a bit of exhaustion on her face. Ashido is taken away to Recovery Girl's room to sleep. They clean the area so Hatsum can get out and the next match can begin. Ida Tenya and Shinso Hitoshi. You guys are up next. Midnight says a bit hoarse. Her voice must hurt from all the yelling and shouting. The two students step into the designated area. Shinso looked bored, but Izuku knew that he was tired from his last fight. It wasn't physical exhaustion but mental exhaustion. It took a lot of energy to control a dangerous, wild Quirk. Go! Ida speeds towards Shinso immediately. Shinso doesn't bother to move. Only at the end does he dodge, but it wasn't enough. Ida had better control than Monoma, which means he wouldn't accidentally run out of the designated area. He swiftly turned and aimed for Shinso again. Shinso only barely dodged. Izuku couldn't help noticing that his style was similar to the hero Ingenium. His quirk was similar too. That brought him back to yesterday when he was doing some work as Deku. A user, Avenging_Heroes, asked him about the weakness of a engine quirk on forearms. The only person he knew with that quirk was Ingenium. It wasn't uncommon for user to ask about a hero's quirk, but it was uncommon to specifically ask for their weakness. Thinking back, he was remembered that everything that the user had asked about was about a quirk's weakness. It was never strength. Avenging_Heroes had asked about many quirks that some heroes he knew had. Every one of those heroes now are dead or injured. Had he been giving out advice to another villain? His advice was only to help, not harm. He knew all the heroes with the quirks Avenging_Heroes asked about were killed or injured by the hero killer Stain. Was Avenging_Heroes Stain? How did he find this out now? Izuku could have prevented multiple deaths if he had just been paying attention. He knew that the advice about the engines on forearms was only replied to yesterday. There was no news about Ingenium between that time, but that wouldn't last for long. Izuku needed to tell Ida about this now. Shinso had just been kicked by Ida out of the arena and onto the floor. He did last for a while, but Ida wouldn't respond to him. He had a lot of self-control, not to rules but mostly everything else. He had to practice it because Ida was a bit too uptight. Sometimes obeying the rules too much doesn't help you. Ida had to learn how to relax. It was something Izuku advised him to do. Shinso Hitoshi is out of bounds. Ida Tenya has won this round. Midnight shouts. Izuku meets Ida near the entrance of the arena. Ida, I think your brother is in trouble. My brother in trouble? He is a hero. I am confident that get out of whatever danger you think he is in. Ida answered with a touch of hero worship. At least send people to his location. I know something going to happen and it's not going to be good. Izuku warned him. I can do that, Ida says. Izuku wasn't usually wrong. He leaves pressing in a phone number. Izuku just hopes that Ida gets to his brother quick enough. Todoroki Shuto and Bakugo Katsuki are versing each other. Midnight gleefully exclaims. All the students are interested. These are the heavy hitter in the hero class. They have the best combat-suited quirks. How would they fight against each other? The two students take their places. Both of him seem arrogant and egoistic to him. Izuku isn't sure on this fight. They both seem powerful. Explosion quirks are strong and powerful, but Todoroki might have the power to stop them. If you plug up the hole, then it will stop. It's the same with Kaken's quirk. If you stop the sweat, no explosions will form. Todoroki's ice can be chipped away by the explosions, which puts them on an equal footing. Go! Todoroki instantly sends ice at Kaken. Kaken dodges and shoots his explosions onto the ground to propel himself up. That doesn't hinder Todoroki. Ice flies through the air. It's aimed at his hands. That's a good idea, but Todoroki actually wasn't doing that. He was cooling the air. Izuku shivered as the air steady got colder and colder. Kaken's explosions are getting smaller and less powerful. The powerful steam of ice cool the air and Kaken is sweating even less. His heart beats furiously. They both have powerful quirks and there is no clear outcome. It gives him a thrill. This is a mystery. The UA hero students are really outstanding. Kaken is still throwing explosions around. He's on the ground after deciding to not waste any more explosions. The explosions start pushing Todoroki towards the edge of the designated area. Todoroki creates a large ice wall, but the explosions are chipping it. Kaken is furious. He keeps yelling profanities and trying to get to Todoroki. When he finally gets through the wall, he is absolutely exhausted. Todoroki created ice from under him and attempts to fling him into the air. Instead, he flies in the air and starts blasting at him from above. Todoroki isn't focused on cooling the air, which gives Kaken more ammunition. They are both careful and do not go past the line. His explosions form in front of Todoroki, creating a wall of explosions. He used Todoroki's idea against him. Any ice forming would be blown off by Kaken's explosions and Todoroki was getting closer to the edge of the designated area. Izuku could tell there was some shouting involved. Something about half doing it. Izuku knew that if Todoroki used his firepower, he'd stand a better chance against Kaken. But every time Izuku suggested using his firepower, Todoroki refused to. He just didn't seem to understand that his fire quirk wasn't from his father. There were many other people with fire quirks. Why was he any different? Anyone can use quirks to harm people, but that was their choice. Shoto, use your fire quirk. Izuku yelled while waving his arms. Everyone turned to him. He turned a bright shade of red. Suddenly bright red light, similar to the shade of Izuku's blush, appeared in the arena. Todoroki created a line of fire that soared through the wall of explosions and into Kaken. When everyone had turned back, they all had seen Kaken flying through the air and out of the designated area. He had used all his sweat and had no more fuel to stop from flying out. You half and half bastard. Kaken screamed as he got up off the ground and lunged at him. Todoroki Shudo goes to the next round. Katsuki Bakugo is out. Midnight shouts. Todoroki steps out of the designated area and calmly walks away, ignoring the screaming Kaken behind him. That was an amazing match. Now for Uraraka Ochako and Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya walked to the designated area. Uraraka was close behind. They took their places. Izuku knew that they wouldn't hold back. He just hoped that she wouldn't be offended if he beat her. He never really had a lot of friends. Go! Uraraka came at him first. She lunges and tried to grab him. Izuku only barely dodged it. His short time doing judo paid off. She lunged at him again. Yet again his dodges. Izuku had to make up a plan quick. Gravity manipulation or anti-gravity. That quirk controls the gravity of an object. If Uraraka only used that quirk on his support items, it wouldn't really affect him. It would make the object lighter, but a bit harder to hold on. The object would have the same mass and it would do the same amount of damage. He had to keep a hold of it. At the next swing, Izuku used his staff to block it. His staff suddenly became lighter. Izuku still had it in his grip and swings it under Uraraka's legs, causing her to fall. The stun was activated, so she was stuck for the next few minutes. Izuku started to relax when he noticed Uraraka looking up. Rocks. Big, giant rocks fell from the sky. Izuku looked up and started to jump around trying to dodge it. Sharp edges scraped him and hit him. Luckily none of the large rocks had hit him. Only small ones he couldn't dodge. About 20 rocks hit the ground before it was over. He looked up just to check. She wasn't finished. When he was dodging some of the rocks, Uraraka had managed to use her quirk on another rock. It was right on top of him and falling rapidly. It nicked him, but he dodged the last one. Izuku tried to catch his breath. Uraraka was in no shape to move. Uraraka Ochako is immobilized. Midoriya Izuku moves to the next round. Midnight announces, "This round is over. Let's cheer on our talented winners." A loud, excited cheer rang through the arena. "Who's ready for the next round?" Present Mike shouts. The audience responds with an excited cheer. Louder! They cheer louder. Not that they really need to. Alright, we have Todoroki Shoto fighting our favorite girl from the support department, Hatsum Mei. The two walk out at midnight shouting. Hatsum is waving proudly and becoming popular among the crowd. Todoroki is just standing there with a cold face. As usual, they take their positions. Go! Hatsum brings out another machine while Todoroki immediately uses his quirk to freeze her and the invention. It doesn't work. Todoroki's ice is quickly melted off of the machine and Hatsum. It probably has a heating system. Hatsum was most likely wearing a suit that had the same property. Izuku thought Todoroki had the advantage. Even though Hatsum had the suit, Todoroki still had his other quirk. If he used it, the suit could become a disadvantage to her. That was only if he used the other side of his quirk. "Look at my amazing baby." Hatsum shot off the mysterious invention. It was probably a new one. The machine looked like a large pink barrel. She flicked the switch on top and a large burst of electricity shot at Todoroki. He started flying back, before creating ice from under him. The student shot up and above the ray onto Hatsum. She barely dodges and turns the machine back at him. Todoroki pushes himself up, but Hatsum wasn't fooled again. She turned the machine upwards. He started flying up and out of the area. A wall appeared behind him, attempting to stop him from flying out, but it was breaking. Izuku noticed that he was shivering too. Todoroki was slowly going down. He had to use his fire quirk now. And he did. This time, without his yelling. A wave of wildfire shoots directly at the machine, burning it. Hatsum immediately releases it. "My baby!" Hatsum shouts. With a sweep, Hatsum is thrown out of the designated area. Hatsum Mei is out of bounds. Todoroki Shoto goes to the finals. Midnight shouts excited. How will face Todoroki in the finals? Midoriya or Ida? Please come up Midoriya Izuku and Ida Tenya. A man in a suit comes up to her. Midnight leans down to hear what he's saying. She nods and stands back up while the man scrambles away. Ida Tenya has withdrawn from the UA Sports Festival for family reasons. Shinso Hitoshi is fighting instead. Midnight announces. Midoriya, still a bit tired, walks up to the designated area. Shinso looked bored as usual, but Izuku detected an upward tilting on his mouth. He was determined, not that he looked like it. Go! Midoriya ran at him. He swung a fist at him, trying to knock him out. Shinso ran out of the way and attempted to throw a fist at him. Are you even sure you have a quirk? Analysis can be copied by anyone. Shinso taunted. He was right on the spot and he didn't even know it. Midoriya's determined expression didn't really change, except for the small gritting of teeth. He doubled to his efforts in pushing Shinso out of the area. Shinso just kept dodging. Swing. Dodge. Swing. Dodge. Can't catch me. Both of them most likely trained their physical body instead of their quirks. They were both fast, but Izuku had more experience and he had weapons. He took out his staff and got ready. Shinso surprisingly also pulls out a weapon. It was a taser. He leaves behind his strategy of dodging and taunting and comes running at Izuku with his taser. Izuku retaliates by swinging his staff. It misses. Shinso is getting closer and now he's running. A staff can harm you with a couple of swings, but one shot with a taser can immobilize you. It's becoming a pattern again. Swing. Swing. Izuku swings, while Shinso dodges and then Izuku runs. His mind quickly forms an idea. The next time Shinso attempted to dodge the staff, Izuku swipes his feet from under him, sits on top of him and pull his arms together and hold them. This is very amusing, Shinso sarcastically says from under him. He tries to push Izuku off of him, but he fails. They are about the same size so it doesn't work. Shinso, can you move? Midnight. He attempts to push him off again. No, Shinso answers. Shinso is immobilized. Izuku moves the finals and is going against Todoroki Shoto. Midnight shouts, "We'll start the finals in a couple of minutes." Izuku scrambles off of Shinsu's back. Sorry. Izuku stutters and starts to back off. It's alright, Shinso responds, walking away. You did really good. You got in the semifinals at least. Izuku jogs next to him, trying to cheer him up. He did do very good for someone with a non-offensive quirk. Ida was supposed to fight. I bet if you had more weapons you could have won. Flattery doesn't work on me. I know I'm not going to be a great hero. You could need support items to help you along the way. I only have an analysis quirk. Without help, I wouldn't have beaten the obstacle course. You did without any weapons. I only got here with weapons and my analysis on other people. I already have knowledge of all the students in the sports festival, so that gives me a head start. You, on the other hand, had only your unique quirk to use. If Hatsum and I can beat the hero students with only support items, you can do more than that. Izuku explains. He doesn't respond immediately. I'll beat you next time. Shinso declares before leaving the arena. Izuku is left there unsure of what to do. He can go over notes and come up with strategies, but nothing prepared you for the real thing. Studying, strategizing, and practicing was what he did in the last few minutes for the finals. He studied Todoroki's movements from other fights to see if there were any weakness he could use. He was still a bit shaky and unpracticed on his fire side. He could have a heat stroke or hypothermia by overusing one side. It was very dangerous, but it was also powerful. Will the amazing finalists of the sports festival come out to the arena? He sighs and goes out to meet his doom. Todoroki was already there. Izuku suspected that he just stayed in the corner of the arena and never left. They walked to the edges of the designated area. Izuku gave him a shy wave. He only stared at him coldly. Go! Instead of just trying to freeze him, like Izuku thought he would, Todoroki uses his fire. Changed it a bit. Izuku mutters as he runs and takes out his staff. Todoroki refuses to answer and sends a wave of uncontrollable fire at him. Flames lick his costume's cape and it starts to burn. He instantly tears the cape off. The rest of it is burning up. Rude, Izuku mutters. Izuku runs at him, a staff in hand. The air starts to cool and ice starts to form on the ground. He nearly slips before sliding right to Todoroki. The staff hits Todoroki on the side, causing him to stumble. Todoroki creates his glaciers and starts to move upwards. Bullets of hard ice pelt him from above. Ice keeps forming on his shoes, which causes Izuku to run around to stop it from forming. It's quickly draining his stamina, and these ice pellets were creating bruises on his arm. He takes a small barrel-shaped weapon out of a secret pocket in his suit. With a click, banner and bubbles fly into the air. Izuku took out his grappling hook and shot it at Todoroki's back while he was distracted from Hatsum's bubble machine. The hook grabbed him around the waist and pulled him down from the glacier. He attempted to push himself up with more ice, but it was too slippery to get a hold on. Todoroki pulls the hook off as he falls and uses his quirk to save himself from harm. Izuku immediately hits him again with the staff, this time with stun. It wasn't fast enough. Todoroki used his fire to blast him out of the designated area. It seems that... Wait. Can you move, Todoroki? Midnight questions. He doesn't answer, and that was a yes to her. Todoroki Shoto is immobilized and Izuku Midoriya is out of bounds. We are gonna have a quick tiebreaker to decide the first and second place winners of the UA festival. Present Mike announces. Since our heroes don't seem to be any shape to fight, Midnight points at the bruised bodies of Izuku and Todoroki. We will have a question that you heroes have to answer. Our audience will decide the winner. A hero is intelligent and knows what to do in a bad situation. People should think heroes are strong, understanding, and safe. Izuku's temporarily stun on Todoroki wears off and two men in suits come up to the students to give them a paper and pencil. On the large board that previously had the rounds of fights, a question was now there. What would you do if there were people stuck in a building, but the villain is running away? He starts to write down his answer. Izuku already knew that he was going to save the people first. It was true that the villain could possibly create more chaos, but it was also true that heroes save people. If you left the people alone, they could die from the dangerous situations a villain put them in. Izuku was here to save people. If beating a villain was the key to helping the people, he was going to do it. Todoroki gave his paper to Midnight first. Here is Todoroki Shudo's answer. Midnight starts to read, I would go after the villain and quickly immobilize him before going after the people. The villain could harm other people and more people will get injured. The people stuck in the building aren't in any grave danger and other heroes will help them. I would want to keep everyone safe. The crowd cheers loudly, causing Izuku to be a tiny bit nervous. Now for Midoriya Izuku's answer. Midnight grabs his paper. Heroes save people. I would save the people in the building first. The building could fall or some other disaster could occur. The villain could be taken out by any other hero, but they might not see the people in danger and they might get harm. I want to save and help people. Beating the villain is just part of being a hero. The crowd cheers even louder. So, first place for Todoroki Shoto. Midnight raises the student's hand and loud cheers come from the crowd. Or Izuku Midoriya. The crowd somehow manages to cheer, yell, clap and shout louder for him. Izuku sees endeavor in the crowd with his hands crossed against his chest. Todoroki's answer was what most people would do in that situation, but it was Izuku's answer that inspired everyone. Keeping people safe doesn't always mean the logical option. We have a winner. Present Mike shouts. Like usual, Midoriya Izuku is first for the UA Sports Festival. Todoroki Shoto comes in second. Hatsume gets third. The students quickly step of the blocks, which have their name on it, and it starts to rise. Izuku's on the top podium with a large smile on his face. Todoroki stand indifferent on the side of him, while Hatsume, somehow, is still showing of more invention. They were the fun ones. All Might steps up to Hatsume first with a bronze medal. He only smiles widely and proudly at her as he places the medal around her neck. All Might then comes up to Todoroki. You did a great job. Truly worthy for a hero. Then he places the silver medal around his neck. I'm proud of you. All Might places a golden medal around Izuku's neck. Everyone applause for your UA Sport Festival winners. The next few days were weekends. He slept most of the time. Fighting a bunch of students that were training to be heroes took a lot of work. Most of the bruises of Todoroki's ice vanished by Sunday, so that was good. Izuku also looked at some requests on his website and answered some of them. He was still a bit unsure about the website now. After discovering villains used his advice, Izuku almost quit. But his mom still needed the money and heroes also used his website. Heroes would stop the villains. So even if Izuku accidentally gave a villain advice, the heroes would stop them. It would also give him knowledge of the strategies the villains would use. After convincing himself to keep the website up, he took some of the requests and answered them. There was a time quirk, water quirks, fire quirks, and a recharging quirk. He only hoped no one was harmed because of the information he was giving out. Izuku first went to Ida on Monday. Ida, how's your brother doing? Izuku asks him softly. He is currently in the hospital for stitches. The hero killer only managed to harm him, but his agency was able to get him to the hospital quick enough to treat all his wounds before they got worse. They say he can go back to hero work in a few weeks. Ida answered relieved. Izuku, how did you know that my brother was in trouble? I can't really answer that. But it could potentially save other people from Stain. I know, I'll tell the principal about it, but... Aizawa enters the classroom, causing all the talking to stop. There are nominations for the hero agencies that want you to intern with them from watching the sports festival. He starts to write the student's name, and the number of nominations that students got next to the name. Despite being in second place, Todoroki was on top with a couple thousands of nominations. Izuku also got a couple thousand. Most of the students got hundreds under them. Aizawa then hands out stacks of papers to the students. You also have to come up with hero names, and Midnight's going to help you later. Just pick a hero agency to go to for now. Then he promptly leaves the room. Instead of immediately bursting into a loud chatter, all the students look at their papers. Cool. Crimson Riot nominated me. It's 13th agency. I'm definitely choosing this one. Izuku flips through his paper to see agencies like All Mights, Snipes, and Midnights. Midnight's agency might help since her quirk is a sleeping aroma and it's not offensive. He need to learn how to fight better, and All Might, how uses brute force, will not help that. Midnight already knows how to fight and utilities her surroundings. Izuku starts to cross out some of the agencies he knows won't help him. Not this. That one might. Probably not. Bam. Midnight arrives, causing another quiet moment. Alright, everyone knows that we're choosing hero names, right? She doesn't wait before handing everyone a whiteboard and marker. I'll give you 15 minutes to come up with your names. Izuku quickly grabs the marker and attempts to pick a name. Deku, no, that's already a famous name. Multimidori? That didn't sound as good. The Analyzer? Not really creative. Midori? It doesn't really sound heroic, more like an idol's name. Suku? That's just a nickname. Advisor? Sounds like I'm an old man. Dikairu? That's just like Deku. The 15 minutes go by quicker than he thought, but at least he thought of a name. Who wanna go up first? Midnight. No one raises their hands. Come on. Do you want me to call people up? Well, there's no harm in trying. Izuku raises his hand nervously. Great. We have our first student. Come on up. He walks up to the front with his whiteboard in hand. Then he stands in front of them showing off what he wrote. The analyzing hero, boundless. It means there's nothing stopping me from helping others. Midoriya explains. That's a great hero name. Midnight exclaims. That's so manly. Great hero name. So brave. I'm going up next. Kaken, not wanting to be beaten again, comes up with his hero name. The exploding hero, detonation. So cool. How'd you come up with that? Katsuki, Midnight starts. That's a little violent. So what? Uraraka walks up to the front to present her hero name. My hero name is Uravity. So cute, Midnight gushes. Ida presents his hero name after her. The running hero, acceleration. Perfect. Midnight shouts. Kirishima is hyped up and runs up. The sturdy hero, Red Riot. Inspiration from the Crimson Riot, huh? Midnight mutters. Kaminari follows after. The stun gun hero, Charge Bolt. Very heroic. Midnight comments. Ashido comes after. My hero name is Alien Queen. That doesn't have anything to do with your quirk and might scare people, Midnight warns her. I'll be the hero, Pinky. Zero decides to go after. Taping hero, Cellophane. Perfect name for your quirk. Midnight adds. Ojiro shows us to go next. Martial arts hero, Tailman. Blunt and a little uncreative, but I like it. Midnight says. Aoyama sparkles to the front of the room after finally being chosen to go. The shining hero, I cannot stop twinkling. Long but true. Midnight exclaims. Tokoyami walks to the front with his whiteboard. The jet black hero, Tsukuyami. That's dark, but it matches your quirk. Midnight comments. Jair comes up next. The hearing hero, Earphone Jack. Sneaky and cute, Midnight says. Hagakure quietly stumbles to the front. The stealth hero, Invisible Girl. Blunt but cute. Midnight shouts. Sato stomps up to the front to show off his hero name. Sweets hero, Sugarman. You are probably going to get a lot of sweets because of this name, Midnight mutters. Koda takes his place in the front. And the petting hero, Anima. Adorable, Midnight gushes. Shoji lumbers to the top of the classroom. The tentacle hero, Tentacle. It's a strong hero name. Midnight says. Yayorozu is next. She steps up to the front and presents her hero name. The everything hero, Creati. Absolutely amazing. Midnight exclaims. Todoroki goes up to the front of the room. Shoto is my hero name. Try something else. You might not want your real name to be everywhere. Midnight advised. Icy Hot can be a stand-in. Todoroki says. Shinso is the next one up. My hero name is Brainwave. Oh, spooky and cool. Midnight comments. Tsuyu is the last one coming to the front. The rainy season hero, Froppy. The best hero name, Midnight shouts. That's great. Adorable. Simple and cute. Suddenly, Aizawa come back in. You still have regular classes to go to. No. They had until Friday to pick their agency to intern at. Izuku had already crossed out more than half of the agencies, but he still had 1,000 left. It didn't help that All Might was still bothering him. He already forgave him, but All Might still didn't need to distract him. He already explained to him multiple times why working at his agency wasn't a good idea. Being strong didn't always mean being a good hero. Most of his classmates already had an agency to intern at. Uraraka was picking Gunhead's agency. Ida had picked an agency near Hosu. He wasn't exactly sure what it was, but Ida thought it would help him use his speed. Grand Torier, or something. He did a lot of research apparently. Todoroki, for some reason, picked Endeavor's agency. Izuku was still trying to convince him to switch to a different agency, but he would not move. It was on Wednesday when picked his agency. There were 2 agencies he had narrowed it down to. It was Eraserhead's agency and Ectoplasm's agency. He was leaning towards Aizawa since he did more fighting. Ectoplasm used his clones more often, but he also had to fight and use their surroundings. On Friday, his decision was final. It was Eraserhead's agency. Most of his classmates were gone on Monday for their internships. In fact, only Izuku and Shinso were in class that day. This is the start of your internship, Aizawa declared, shocking the interns. Wait, Shinso also an intern? Izuku is your intern? Yes, why else do you think you're both here for? Aizawa asks. We're going to be working with those awful reflexes you have. Then he starts throwing knives at them. Izuku dodges most of them, but most is not all. He dodges the first blade but is caught by the third. It hits his finger. Instead of causing a wound, the limit hit stopped working. It was similar to his stunning staff. Yes, it's stunning in 2 ways. That didn't really hinder him. Izuku kept dodging. He did have some paralyzed limbs, but nothing too major. His judo classes he has took some years ago helped. Shinso, on the other hand, had his arms and legs paralyzed and was laying on the ground. He probably wasn't fast enough. It kinda made Izuku want to laugh, or save him. But he couldn't do that now. Aizawa's attention was all on him. It took Aizawa 5 more minutes to fully paralyze Izuku. Izuku groaned right as Aizawa threw another knife into his gut. You can stop now. Izuku mutters. Dead people don't talk. Aizawa responds as he throws another knife into his gut. If these were real knives, you would be dead from blood loss 3 minutes ago. Shinso would have been dead 5 minutes ago. I choose you because you have potential. Both of your quirks aren't offensive, but they are useful. He continued to lecture them while they were paralyzed on the ground. Strategies. Special moves. Using their surroundings. Support items. He talked about all of them. It took about 10 minutes for the students to get feeling back into their bodies. Izuku stretched a bit and continued to listen to his lecture. Aizawa showed them a couple of moves, and asked Izuku to spot the weak spots in the fighting form he put Shinso in. They messed around with support items Aizawa had brought and day ended pretty quickly. It did not stop Izuku's mom from worrying over the bruises on his limbs. Multiple students were bruised and tired the next day. Some seemed normal. They could not stop talking about their internships. It was mostly introductions, but it was all very exciting. Gunhead's training area was so cool. Uraraka gushed. Gran Torino teachings is effective. He has a lot of experience. Ida informed them. Aizawa just kept pelting us with knives and lecturing us. Izuku sheepishly told them. That sucks, bro. Kirishima responds. Suddenly Kaken comes in with brushed, styled hair. K. Kaken. Izuku stuttered. Shut up. Kaken shouts as he stomps over to his seat. Instead the class starts laughing at him. It was pretty funny to see Kaken trying to look proper. What happened, Bakugo? Kirishima asks between his laughing. I hate my internship. That was his only response. Aizawa promptly walked in, causing all talkings to stop. Your reaction time has improved. He commented as he looked at the class, but mostly at Izuku and Shinso. Izuku stayed silent while Shinso glared. Class quickly began after that. Izuku was once again dodging knives. Aizawa had started throwing knives at them again right after all of the others left. He could tell they were doing better, but that only meant Aizawa was going to push them harder. Instead of 5 minutes, they lasted about 10 minutes together. Shinso, still a bit unsure on his feet, tripped, causing Aizawa to get an opening. He was immediately pelted by knives. Izuku only managed another 3 minutes until he was down. At least Aizawa didn't throw a knife in his gut this time. He did insult them and then proceed to talk about using their surroundings, which would soon cause Shinso to throw a chair at him the next day. We're going to the UA gym. Aizawa announced. Izuku struggled to drag his body up and followed him without a question. A question would get you pelted with knives, so it's best not to ask. Shinso and Izuku dragged their bodies down the hallway to the doors of the gym, which Aizawa unlocked. Inside was a large, terrifying obstacle course, placed in the middle of a massive gym. Another one? It wasn't as large as the one in the sports festival, but it was just as difficult. A large wall was the start of the course, followed by a long pool of water. After that was little sprouts of fire coming out of the shaking ground. Swinging wrecking balls were after that, followed by a machine gun. It shot only paralyzing bullets, but neither of the students knew that. Last was a single rope in the middle of a hole. How were they supposed to do that? If you want to go home, you have to complete this obstacle course. Aizawa explained. Can I use my support items? Izuku quietly asked. He hoped Aizawa wouldn't throw a knife at him again. No. What? Shinso said. Are you deaf? I said you can't use your support items to complete this course. You might face an opponent while you're down and weaponless, so you have to run. A knife shot at Shinso, who quickly dodged. Then Aizawa ran at the wall, jumped, and grabbed the edge to pull himself up. He dived right into the water and swam across it swiftly. After getting out of the pool, the hero jumped onto the areas the fire was just at last and crossed the path quickly. He ran through the wrecking balls, nearly getting hit at the end. He sprinted in a zigzag formation through the field where the machine gun was firing. Then their teacher jumped at the rope, grabbing it, and swung himself to the end. This was all done in less than 5 minutes, without any support items or quirks. Izuku and Shinso were left with their mouths hanging open. Go on, you don't want to be here when the school closes. Aizawa informs them. Izuku began by analyzing the wall. It was completely smooth, gray, and about 6'5" tall. It might be possible to jump for it. Shinso, I'm going to try to get onto the wall. Izuku told him. The other student nodded and watched. Izuku walked a good distance away from the wall. Then he turned and ran at it. At the last second he jumped. But he was a bit short. Maybe Shinso could try it, he was taller. Shinso. I'll try. Shinso actually touched the edge but couldn't grip it. Izuku attempted to jump while he was right in front of the wall, but he was short. This is why he needed a grappling hook. Izuku tried running again. He got closer at every jump. He grabbed the edge and pulled himself up. Finally. Shinso. Grab onto my hand. Izuku shouted. He gripped Izuku's arm and Izuku pulled him up. Are you sure we're not going to get in trouble? Shinso asked. I don't think helping other students would be considered cheating because what he said was to get to the end. I'll blame you if we get in trouble. Noted. Izuku turned to the next obstacle. It seemed easy, but there was going to be a twist somewhere. It just seemed too easy. Wait. Izuku shouted as Shinso jumped into the water. He couldn't turn back and hit the water. Shinso stood in the water that was about 5 feet deep and gave Izuku an annoyed glance. What? There a trap in this obstacle? Just as he said that, Shinso was flung into the air. He landed on the other side of the wall again. It's good to see you again. Izuku greeted as he pulled Shinso up the wall once more. Yeah, how nice. Shinso sarcastically responds. You only got flung out of the air because you touched the ground. I'm estimating that pool is about 30 feet long. We have to stay up for that long. Shinso went again. He was careful to not touch the ground and eventually made it to the other side. Izuku, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. He was doing fine until another knife was flung at him, causing him to dodge. His feet touched the ground and Izuku was flung back into another area of water, about 10 feet away. That made him swim more. Then he got hit with another knife at 25 feet. That flung him back again. When his hands finally reached the end of the pool, he was very relieved. "It's good to see you again." Shinso greeted him. "Wow, very original." He immediately begins to analyze the next obstacle. Random sprouts of fire would shoot out from random areas. From what he saw Aizawa do, Izuku knew that the fires never hit at one stop multiple times. "We have to step on the areas the fires were original at." Izuku informs him. "Right? You're going first this time." "Fine, but the wrecking balls are your job." "Wait." Izuku already jumped onto the nearest area that had been lit up originality. He followed the pattern and got across easily. Shinso followed him and came through unharmed. They were facing the wrecking balls next. There was about 6 wrecking balls in a row. "How did you even get wrecking balls? Did they just ask someone?" Izuku shook his head and pushed that thought out of his curious mind. Aizawa had just ran through, but he knew that they weren't fast enough. There wasn't a gap between the wrecking balls, so stopping at the area between wrecking balls would not work. Did they have to run? Suddenly, a crazy idea comes into mind. "Jump onto the wrecking balls." "You want me to jump onto balls that have spikes on them?" "Yes. It's safer than running through the whole thing." "Okay." Shinso grimaced but got ready. When the wrecking ball was going down, he jumped onto it. H's hands gripped the chain on top and managed on hold onto it. The top of the wrecking balls weren't sharp, so he was able to stand on it. "Shinso, when the other wrecking ball goes down, jump onto it." "Like that's easy." Shinso mutters. Just as the wrecking ball goes down, Shinso manages to grab the chain and pulls himself onto that wrecking ball. "Just continue," Izuku urged him. Izuku got ready for his turn and jumped onto the wrecking ball. It was harder than he thought. It wasn't the spikes but the slippery outside of the ball. He used the spikes to lift himself up. Izuku briefly noticed that the spikes were dulled and looked similar to the knives Aizawa used. The wrecking balls swung down again and he jumped. He continued to jump from each wrecking ball to the other. Miraculously, they made it. "I did not think we would make that," Izuku commented. They turned to the next challenge. It was the machine gun. Aizawa also run through this one. They would have to build up speed, but right now, Izuku knew they weren't fast enough. "I can think of multiple ways to get out, but they might not work," Izuku told him hesitantly. "So far all your ideas have worked. Why wouldn't this work?" Shinso scoffed. "You're talking too much. A villain could have snuck in by that time and killed both of you." Aizawa groaned. He took out his knife and threw at them. It hit Shinso right on the leg. Izuku sighed at his teacher's behavior and went back to the task. He needed to see how the machines worked. First, Izuku crouched down and pressed a finger onto the ground. Multiple bullets were shot at that area. It didn't hit him, but it gave him a clue. All the bullets were shot at the same height. That meant they could crawl through the whole area without getting hit. At least that's what would probably happen. It's not like they would kill him, right? Izuku started to crawl first. The bullets flew over him, just like he thought. Shinso dragged himself from behind. They were doing just fine until Aizawa started coming over. If villains were shooting at you, it wouldn't only be at one height. Aizawa commented. The students started to rush. There was only a quarter left. He couldn't get caught by Aizawa. Not now. Aizawa was stood behind the machine gun that flicked a switch. Suddenly all the bullets vanished. It didn't fool Izuku. He got up, grabbed Shinso and ran. Bullets shot at their heels, but they made it in a few seconds. The students were bruised, wet, and most of all, tired. You can go home. Aizawa told them, it took you 15 minutes and I expect you to improve the next time. The next time? Izuku didn't shout, because he didn't want a knife in the gut. Instead, he nodded, left the building, jogged to his house, and collapsed into the couch. The rest of the internship passed by pretty quickly. Aizawa actually taught them some moves and got the support department to make items for Shinso. Izuku already had his own. He was also very blunt and brief. He would tell to find someone, but neglected to tell them that they had to fight that someone. It didn't help that he had sent Nezu on them. But it was a very interesting experience. One day, Aizawa greets them with a message instead of knives. We are going to Hosu. Wait, why? Izuku asks. A training facility is located there. Aizawa answers. Then he promptly hits Izuku in the gut with a knife again for that question. Ow, Izuku mutters as they walk to Aizawa's car. I wonder how the training facility looks like. Is there going to be another obstacle course? Is it something else? Why couldn't we do it in U.A? Is it like the USJ? I hope not. Are they any other heroes going to there? Will there? Midoriya, shut up and let me sleep, okay? Shinso says, glancing at Midoriya. Oh, sorry. It did not look like any other UA facility they seen before. The training facility was an house. It was just a normal, large 2-story house. Is this the right place? Izuku stuttered, unsure. He didn't want another knife to the gut, but he also didn't want to break into a random stranger's house. It is, now come inside. Aizawa ordered tiredly. The house looked normal and so did the inside of it. Why were they here? Your objective is to protect the golden ring that is located in a bedroom. I will be playing the villain attempting to steal it. Either you get it out of the bedroom or cuff me and arrest me. Aizawa explains as he gives them both cuffs. Go. They obey. Izuku was very relieved that brought his support items with him today. He didn't think that he'd be fighting Aizawa, but he did know this would be the hardest test. Aizawa was running up the stairs and they quickly followed him. He shot his grappling hook, attempting to pull him back. It schemes his scarf. They need long-distance weapons. The goal was to protect the ring, not stop the villain. All had to do it grab the ring. It would only be a bonus if they could sneak up on Aizawa and cuff him. So, we have to get to the bedroom first. Can you distract him? He nods and takes out his newest support item. Izuku rushes down the stairs and out the door. The bedrooms had to have a window, which meant there would be opening to climb in. A quick run around the house reveals that there are 4 second-floor windows. He pushed a window open. The first one he grapples up is a child's bedroom. There only a bed, 2 drawers, and a couple of toys. He quickly checked the drawers, looks under the bed, and examines the toys. It wasn't there. Izuku ran to the master bedroom, which was just across the hall. It was all smoky and cloudy. Shinso or Aizawa had been in here. That meant the ring wasn't in there. A loud crash rang through the house. Izuku immediately ran towards it, into the baby's bedroom. Shinso was climbing out of the wall and Aizawa was throwing things around. He knew that it wasn't in the child's bedroom or the master's bedroom, and Aizawa have probably found it by now if it was in this bedroom. But there wasn't any other bedrooms in the second floor. Then an idea comes running at him. They had another floor. The bedroom was probably in the second floor. He grabs Shinso and helps him up. We need to find the bedroom in the first floor. The bedroom on the first floor. Shinso repeats as he rushes off to find it. Izuku goes to the other side and starts opening the doors. Suddenly, the house starts to shake and everything starts falling. The TV in the living room, the pictures on the walls, everything just starts to collapse. Shinso is running at him. I found the ring. They run. The door is right in front of them. But Aizawa appears right in front of them. He blocks the doorway. Izuku runs the other way, but scarves start grabbing his limbs. The hero makes one simple mistake. Izuku doesn't have the ring. Shinso, go through the window. Before Aizawa could do anything, Shinso kicks the glass window and jumps out. Izuku takes advantage of the situation and cuffs Aizawa. Everything stops. The items stop spilling onto the floor. Aizawa stops moving. Shinso is on the floor exhausted, but relieved. Izuku feels proud. He had beat his teacher. You completed the goal, but you still have one from task before this internship is over. Aizawa declares, still cuffed on the floor, you have to clean up the house. Erase her head. It took hours to finish cleaning that house. Aizawa didn't help at all and slept in the car the whole time. They had to move sofas and chairs back to where they were and pick up all the paintings. Some of the items were damaged and irreparable, so they had to be thrown into the trash, which was half a mile away. It was a little dark when they started to return to U.A. when Aizawa got a phone call. He put his phone to his ear and continued driving. It was short. Izuku only inferred that it was a villain. Alright, I'll be there. They started to drive back. Where are we going? Izuku stuttered. Hosu. But weren't we just back there? So. Izuku refrained from speaking again. The first thing he heard were screams. There were no-mo flying over the city. Heroes were running around trying to contain the chaos. Aizawa parked the car a good distance away. Stay here, he ordered. They followed that order until Izuku managed to hear a familiar voice. It was Ida. Izuku ran out of the car. Izuku, get back into the car. Shinso shouts, causing Izuku to stop. Shinso never shouts. He looks back at him. But Shinso, how we just sit here when someone's in trouble? Izuku asks, before he runs off again. He hears Ida shout again and heads off to that direction. It leads him into a dirty alleyway where he sees 3 people. Ida was on the ground with blood all over his shirt. A hero, native, was behind him, also bleeding. But the last person was towering over them, with a long, sharp sword. It was the hero killer Stain. So far, it didn't seem like the hero killer had noticed him. He was too busy talking and ranting about fake heroes. Izuku quickly took out his phone and texted every student he knew. Saving the hero and Ida from Stain was not going to be an easy task. If his speculations were correct, then Izuku would know what Stain's quirk was. No one had escaped him, so no one ever knew, but Izuku might. If Stain was a vegging_heroes from his website, then the hero killer had a blood quirk. It was the first quirk the user had asked about. His quirk lets him consume the bloods of others to paralyze them for different amounts of time. The amount of time depended to the type of blood the other person had. Stain allowed had numerous traps and tricks with it. They also came up with a long-distance strategy just a few weeks ago. At that time, Izuku didn't know it was Stain. He also started looking at Izuku. I don't fight civilians. Run while you still can. Stain warned him. You have my friend, who isn't a hero. Izuku says instead. He got in the way and you are annoying me already. Leave. No. Then he tries to jump at him from behind. Of course, it fails, but Izuku wasn't trying to tackle Stain anyways. He brings out his staff and attempts to jab it into the hero killer's side. It succeeds, but not before Stain had sliced his arm and paralyzed him. Everyone is just still. Izuku knew that his stun would only last for 5 minutes, but the blood paralysis would be for longer. Ida, what's your blood type? I have blood type A. Why? His quirk efficiency depends on your blood type. Blood type B has a longest amount paralysis. It think up to 8 minutes? AB is the second longest, followed by A, and last is O type blood. I have O type. I think that's only 2 minutes. Izuku rambles. How do you know that? Every person that experience my quirk is dead. Unless, Stain laughs, he doesn't know, does he? I don't know what you're talking about. Izuku refuted. Are you sure? You forgot the harpoon for long-distance fighting you were talking about too. Midoriya. What is he talking about? Ida asks worried. So your name is Midoriya? Stain mused. No, it isn't. Izuku stuttered. I can't believe a kid like you is Deku.